All right. I think we're ready to roll. Yep. Audio sounds good. Other than I still got the fall allergies, so my voice is kind of not as great today, but I could probably play around with the microphone and audio, but we're not going to worry about that today because we got severe weather. And with our live camera network, we have some severe weather in some of the best states: Oklahoma, Arkansas, maybe pushing into parts of Tennessee and even parts of Mississippi in the evening. We have some states that have some of the best camera networks really in the country, not just in the spread, but also just copyright free, openly accessible, that kind of stuff. So I feel like we're playing a home game here. We have cameras all over these areas, even in some of the more remote areas of the Ozarks and the Boston Mountains into northwest Arkansas. We're going to have you covered here with severe weather coverage, radar analysis, camera coverage, all the good stuff. If things get a little dull, they're kind of on the dull end right now. We may also talk tropics, as we have some interesting tropical developments too, especially in the tropical Atlantic. And just to kind of preface everything, on top of the severe weather, it doesn't get enough coverage on any of really the national networks, local networks even, and especially on YouTube streaming. Just streaming weather just doesn't really, it's not as conducive for it. But flooding does not get enough really deserved attention. And I do want to preface this with all the severe weather. We're going to see tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, big hail, damaging winds, potentially some stronger tornadoes in a pretty concentrated area here into the Ozarks. Yeah, there is a flash flood threat. There's a lot of rain that's falling in these storms. It's a very humid atmosphere, especially to along and south of the boundary here. But you can see through the Ozarks, especially into southern Missouri, now really filling in northwest Arkansas. There are tons of flash flood warnings from basically Springfield and Joplin down through Bentonville, Fayetteville, north of Fort Smith right now, really in some of these higher terrains of the Boston Mountains and the southern Ozarks. Areas around Branson looks like they're under this flash flood warnings. So I do want to just kind of start the stream by acknowledging that, and please turn around, don't drown. Also, if you're in a flood prone area right now and it's drier, because it's probably raining already, so there's going to be water in your flood prone area. But if you know your area floods, get out now before it gets dark. Don't risk it, especially you may have to get in a vehicle. You can drive to a higher location before it gets dark. You want to do that. Yeah, this is going to be a dangerous threat that's going to continue long after the tornado threat dies down. Is this flash flood warnings really, again, Joplin, Springfield down to Branson, Eureka Springs, Bentonville, Springdale, Fayetteville, and over towards Harrison. And this will likely get stretched out and continued just with the amount of heavy rain that's already fallen really all day for some of these areas. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more flash flood warnings down towards Mountain View, Mountain Home, Cherokee Village, Salem, Batesville, and so forth, West Plains in Missouri, and all that. So please, again, turn around, don't drown, seek higher ground in a flood-prone area. There's a flash flood watch that covers much of this area all the way down through Hot Springs, all the way down through Little Rock, and then still with the rain that's fallen back towards Bartlesville, Tulsa. Tulsa's really gotten hammered with some flooding rains over the last week or so. So yeah, I do want to start there, especially right now. There's no tornado warnings in effect. So I do want to take a little bit of time for the flash flood and flood threat. This may continue also in the next couple days, not as much of a flash flood threat, but also a flood threat, just as some of these areas in here get some really high rainfall totals, locally 2 to 4 inches. It was the flash flood warnings and watches, but potentially there's some spots in especially the higher terrain of the Boston Mountains that could get in that 6 to 8 inch range, or especially 5 to 8. And that's all going to flow downstream towards the Arkansas River Valley, eventually down towards areas that aren't going to get a lot of rain further down river, as these streams and rivers in the mountains kind of funnel into the bigger rivers like the White River, Arkansas River, and so forth. Yeah, The Spring River is another one up in here. So anyway, please pay attention if you're in a flood prone area downstream as well. That's going to be a threat that lingers in the next few days. So touring the severe weather, we have our new tornado watch. This just came out about a half hour ago, or about an hour ago now. Tornado watch for northwest and north central Arkansas and also eastern Oklahoma. It's pretty much the area that the models have pegged, and also models and day one data coming into the National Weather Service office and the Storm Prediction Center. This is the area that's most concentrated corridor of potential tornadoes. A few of these could be intense. That is noted in the hazards of this watch. So we do have to watch for that. Scattered damaging winds are likely. Isolated significant gusts could be hurricane force. And then scattered large hail, isolated very large hail, up to 2 inches in diameter. And that's going to continue here. We also have our newest watch. This is a severe thunderstorm watch. This goes until 10 p.m. Oh, the tornado watch also goes till 10 p.m. in the central time zone. This severe thunderstorm watch further south for southwest Arkansas, the central and southern parts of Oklahoma, and also North Texas, essentially the Red River Valley, into portions of ArkLaTex. Little less severe chance here, at least an all hazard severe threat. Down here, we're going to primarily see the scattered damaging winds. This one actually calls for some high-end damaging winds in that 75-mile-an-hour hurricane force kind of range. Also some scattered large hail. I think that's really going to be the primary threat down here. Anything that does develop further south is going to be, I think, a big hail threat. And a tornado or two are possible. It really depends how widespread this tornado threat gets. It's going to depend on a few things. We have essentially a rain-cooled boundary. These storms right now are riding right along that rain-cooled boundary. There's been storms all day across northern Arkansas and southern Missouri. That cluster has kind of pushed eastbound and worked into the Mississippi River Valley, kind of trailing that. You can almost see it here even on the reflectivity. There's just a boundary right about in there like that, and these storms are just riding along that. There's also a frontal boundary that's going to be working into this area, so it's kind of a combined warm front, cold front, frontal boundary setup. That's going to spark, I think, the next round of storms, and you can start to see those developing back a little further into the watch areas. There's kind of an upper level trough through here. It's actually a positively tilted trough, so we don't see as much severe weather typically from a positively tilted trough. But there's also been some cyclogenesis with a low level or a mid-level low pressure. Last I checked, it was somewhere like right in here. So it's not a very deep low pressure. It's still above 1,000 millibars, but it's somewhere in here, I think near Bartlesville right now. And that's just going to add a little extra vorticity things. And then we do have a little mid-level jet streak that's kind of crossing this area with some westerlies. So essentially we have some kind of southern flow out ahead of us with a low-level jet. We have some westerlies. We have a low pressure with a little bit of turning with height. So there's a little bit of, it's not very high-end shear, but there is some vertical shear through the atmosphere. There's some turning with height, and then there's plenty of moisture, especially down in here, the Arkansas River Valley. Further south, there's plenty of moisture. These areas have not been worked over by storms yet today. Up here, it's going to be a little more questionable, I think. I'm especially interested in this area. Some of the models still, as of the last hour, had a pretty vigorous line of storms kind of working and developing kind of across the back edge of these watch areas and then working into this area. I'm really interested to see if that develops in the next couple hours. That could even push a little bit of a severe threat into southern or southwestern Missouri. So we'll see about that if the models kind of verify. I think the models might verify that, at least on the southern end. I think this part here up towards Joplin, Pittsburgh, even back towards Tulsa is maybe a little bit of more of a question mark. But we'll see about that. So, yeah, that's where we are. We also have, before things really get rolling, behind all this, there's a couple even stronger storms near Pueblo, Colorado. But I do want to note, 'tis the season here. Let's see where those are now. You may notice the Radar Omega has a new look to it, so pretty excited about that. There's going to be some updates coming to Radar Omega, so you may see a little bit of a different look here over the next couple months. But this is the interesting look here out of Colorado. This is at Dakota Hill, Colorado. It's up here along I-70. If I really wanted to, we can kind of find it, but let me move this out of the way. But we do have a winter weather advisory. It basically covers southern parts of Wyoming, and then really the front range of Colorado, including Rocky Mountain National Park, Roosevelt National Park, and basically areas just 45 minutes out of Denver to the west, especially up here towards Georgetown, and then over towards Frisco, Breckenridge, Colorado, Winter Park. Ski slopes aren't active yet, but they're getting some early season snow here, some early September snow. This is the look the last hour here at a weather station out of Dakota Hill. And you know what? I should look at it. Let's see real quick. Highest totals were a good 4 to 6 inches in a lot of the higher terrain above 8,000 feet, but then potentially up to a foot or more in some of those highest peaks, especially over like 13,000 feet. All right. Okay, this is a it's a NOAA and a FAA weather station at Dakota Hill. It is located at 10,938 feet above sea level. So it is near Rawlins Pass. We might be able to find that. Anyway, we have severe weather. I'm not going to find the exact location, but it's basically 11,000 feet. So that checks out. That you can see the pine trees are covered with some white, fluffy snow. It's a heavy, wet snow. So there could be some localized power issues if some branches and trees come down. It's mostly not going to be a problem because there's not a lot of major highways through here. The pass, at least earlier today, along 70, had some snow on the sides, but the roads seemed clear. So, but especially as we get towards evening, there could be some slick spots, especially in those highest elevations on the Front Range. This is not a snow threat for Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins. This is a high elevation winter snow threat, but the first one of the season. And let's just clear that off. Wrong one. Still getting a little used to the menu setup. It's mostly the same, but it's a little different here in spots. I just want to clear out some of the unnecessary warnings. I don't need my winter weather warnings up today. Just to make sure we don't get any lag or anything. All right, so let's get back in here and tour the severe weather. This is a pretty strong storm. It's a feisty one. It's a little supercell over here near Mountain View. It does have some rotation on it, so we'll keep an eye on that one. You can see it has a little bit of an appendage that's kind of stuck down in here. It has at least a small but punchy hail core, so we'll keep our eye on this little supercell accessing the warm and moist inflow, that untapped inflow south of the kind of boundary, rain-cooled boundary that's set up here. I've said it before, but generally when we see a flat-facing front in the appendage there, it's generally not imminently tornadic. We like to see that hook a little bit tighter. Basically some rain-cooled air. The rear flank downdraft kind of helps spin that up as we funnel in the warm, moist air, and we get a little more of that little hook shape to it. So right now, it's a hook, it's a supercell, it has some broad rotation on it, at least at the mid-levels. It's going to need to just kind of really get itself a little more organized here before we see a tornado threat out of that one. A little surprised it doesn't have a severe thunderstorm warning yet, especially with the large hail starting to show up in that core. That's coming right down Arkansas Highway 66 towards Mountain View. So you guys are about to get hammered with some hail right there. And that's going to continue working its way through this special weather statement polygon. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets upgraded to at least a severe thunderstorm warning. Let's go a little bit east. I do want to take a look here. These are storms that really have been rocking through the Ozarks here all day. The leading edge of those now pushing along the Mississippi River, pushing into western parts of Kentucky and Tennessee. Non-severe right now. Pretty nasty storm looking out here towards Missouri around Kennett and Steele over towards Caruthersville. And not a lot of wind in that one. It looks to me mostly looks like heavy rain. Another little line coming through Paragould, Bono, coming approaching Jonesboro. And then even a new cluster of storms kind of developing out ahead of all this, out towards Jackson and Lexington, Tennessee, over towards Parsons and Decaturville. Severe thunderstorm warning there with a tornado possible tag. Yeah, this does have a little area of rotation on it here near Reagan. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Center Hill, Reagan. It's going to be along Kentucky or Tennessee Highway 100 coming towards Decatorsville and Parsons. So keep an eye on that one. If you're in this warning polygon, start to think about your tornado safety plan, especially if you're out ahead of this. Bible Hill, Darden, Parsons, Perryville, Decaturville, Lick Skillet, and Mount Carmel. Again, no tornado warning yet. Tornado warning tornado possible severe thunderstorm warning. And it does seem like that's tightening a little bit. It's not getting more intense. It just seems to be at least holding its own on intensity, but it does seem to be tightening a little bit. So that's a little bit concerning. And let's get just a look here at the timing of things. It's only moving east at 20 miles an hour. So you do have a little bit of time if you're ahead of this. And we'll take it from the core here at 20. It might be moving at 25. It may be moving a little quicker than that. But that's going to put it into areas here. You'll see it on the screen. Warren's Bluff, about 9 minutes. And then Darden over here at, let's get that on. There we go. You can pick these now. Darden at about 14 minutes. Parsons, 26. Decaturville, 23. So this 641 corridor, about 20 to 25 minutes. And then out at the end of the warning polygon, Perryville in about 34 minutes. And that's in west central parts of Tennessee. Keep an eye on that storm. It may go tornado warned. All right, back here. Let's go back into northwest Arkansas where we've had some hail reports here. This was just about a half hour ago near Lincoln, Arkansas in Washington County. A hail of about 1.5 inches. So there is some large hail in these cluster storms that's working its way through the Arkansas area. Let's leave our snow scene. We'll keep an eye on that one. And it's been like that all day. Let's see. This is the last hour. These cycle every 10 minutes. So actually, you probably can't even tell besides the lighting's maybe getting darker. It's really been the same. But this is all the way back 5 hours ago on this camera, and it looks pretty much the same. With actually heavier snow 5 hours ago, you can see the visibility drops a little bit on those pine trees. Slightly more visibility now, so the snow may have lessened up a little bit on Dakota Hill. That's a weather observing station by the FAA, and NOAA there at, again, 11,000 feet in Colorado. So, all right, that's that. Let's go back to northwest Arkansas. This is a look out of northwest Arkansas. This is mile marker 59 on I-49. It's just south of Fayetteville. This is in the slop here near West Fork. So this is really in it here. You can see some heavy traffic coming out of the northwest Arkansas metro area too. There are some embedded areas of rotation in this cluster of storms. I've been kind of watching it since we started setting up the stream. Nothing has super tightened up. Yeah, I may have mentioned it at least in the beginning intro, but this is a slightly conditional setup for tornadoes across this tornado watch. And actually, it's such a small tornado watch. I can get the whole tornado watch in here without actually zooming out that far. So that shows you how kind of localized this area of greatest tornado risk is. It's essentially northwest Arkansas and northeast eastern Oklahoma. But it is conditional. As we kind of mentioned earlier, there's a low that's kind of developed north of here towards the Bartlesville area along the Oklahoma-Kansas border. There's a boundary, essentially rain-cooled boundary that's pushed into a warmer and moister and more unstable air mass. Essentially, that boundary lies just north of the I-40 corridor where these storms are riding along. And then there's a kind of a bit of a trailing cold front from the low that's coming into this area with a little bit of a mid-level jet streak, westerly winds at the mid-level, some southerly winds here, convergence here with, I can check the winds, but they're probably easterly or winds north of this rain-cooled boundary, if I had to guess. So you can just kind of see there's a bit of turning with height, but it all kind of has to come together at the same point, and it all has to come together pretty much right now, where we have really the end of daytime heating as we get into the evening hours. Generally between 2 and 4 o'clock is when we see high temperatures. So we're going to start to lose that solar energy here in the next hour or two, especially now that we're past the fall equinox. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, that is pretty much. I was kind of guessing a little bit just based on how meteorology works. I didn't actually check those beforehand, but yeah, you can see here there's westerly winds and somewhat southwesterly winds across the Tulsa area. This is really our rain-cooled boundary right in here, because there are easterly winds coming across this area, like Springdale, Fayetteville, and up towards Branson. These are easterly winds. And then you can see right here down towards the Arkansas River Valley, down towards Little Rock, Searcy, Fort Smith, you got southwesterly winds. There are southerly winds here. So this is your wind profile. You can see there's convergence. There's some spinning with height. Definitely an area that could be conducive of some tornadoes, but they all just, things have to happen actually fairly quickly, I think, to get some. Yeah, and then here's a look also at temperatures. Ooh, it is cooking down here. Look at this. 91 at Muskogee, 92 at Fort Smith, 88 at Russellville. These are current temperatures. These aren't high temperatures. So I haven't checked. These may be a degree or two off from the high already. 90 at Little Rock. It's close to or just below the high of the day. But yeah, so 80s, upper 80s, low 90s here across the Arkansas River Valley. And then rain-cooled 70s and 60s across northern Arkansas. That's really going to limit some of those severe threats, I think, potentially, especially to the north. We talked about that a little bit ago. I think especially north of Tulsa, even up towards Bartlesville right now, it's only 79, where it's about 86 in the Tulsa metro. One station reporting 91, but some of these stations you do have to kind of be cautious of where. That one's at an airport, so that's going to be a decent one. Some stations have biases towards higher temperatures if they're in a parking lot or, you know, surrounded by concrete where they're warmer. You know, some stations may have wind biases if they're right next to a building, something like that. There can be some outliers. It looks like generally in the Tulsa area it's about 86, so upper 80s in the Tulsa area. This is more consistent down here towards Fort Smith with these readings. 91, 92, that kind of range down further south. But yeah, I think pretty sharply here north of Tulsa, the severe risk is really kind of minimal. We'll see though. The models do kind of push some strong storms up in here, but I just don't see it right now. So we'll have to see if that verifies. Okay, I just saw a weird NA, but I guess that one is just not reading. Yeah, up towards Joplin, 73. Taking a look at some of these other readings here. Yeah, we've had storms push. These are morning convection, essentially morning and overnight convection, push all the way into Illinois through St. Louis, but not expecting a lot of severe weather up here. Again, it's cooler, less instability, but some thunderstorms, some good rain for some areas that haven't had a lot of rain. And then, yeah, out here, we do have kind of a little bit of a boundary here. It's 88, 90 in Memphis. It's only 82 in Nashville. So these storms are kind of riding along a little bit of a boundary too. They have reduced that tornado possible tag. So that's a good sign there coming towards Decaturville. Still keep an eye on that one. And we will see there is a potential for some isolated, especially damaging wind gusts as this line works its way into western parts of Kentucky, western parts of Tennessee. Yeah, we may get a random warning or two out of those. Again, mostly a wind threat. All right, that's some live meteorology, doing some now casting there, taking a look at some data, raw off of immediately. So raw, not even model data, just straight from the weather stations. This is some gusty winds showing up in here. $half size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Let's see which way these are kind of moving. Yeah, they're kind of moving parallel to the or perpendicular to the radar. So the wind profile isn't going to show up great on those. But yeah, some gusty winds in here. And newest warning here going out for Clinton, Fairfield Bay. These are areas north of Russellville towards Greenbrier. Taking a look at, yeah, there's a wind profile in here. A little bit of broad rotation, but this is more of a gusty wind. You can see this surging out as it works its way to the south and east. So some gusty winds coming towards Fairfield Bay and Clinton. Maybe some small hail. If there is any hail, it would be in this area right in here near Rupert. And then further to the north, we've lost some of that rotation that was going on in that storm near Mountain View. That one doesn't look quite as healthy. That may be north of the boundary here. Again, that boundary will continue to kind of sag along this area, and it may be starting to undercut some of these storms. They're also kind of training along themselves, so they're also running into their own rain-cooled boundary. But you can see there's a little bit of outflow. Looks like riding right along the I-40 corridor. That could really cut off that tornado threat further to the north if that outflow undercuts these storms, which it may be doing right now. Because just in the last scan or two, I haven't seen as much in the way of rotation. There's still some in here, but just a few minutes ago, this was actually a more potent cluster of severe thunderstorms. If I put this back a little bit more, there's a little bit more of an area of rotation right in here. Just actually crossed over basically our camera at West Fork. And the sun is coming out in some of these areas here. This is up towards Edwards Junction behind these cluster of storms, up along 412 at State Highway 16. Let me see if I can grab it. Here's 16. It's somewhere up in here. Maybe south of there, maybe down in here. Anyway, you can see how humid and moist it is. The clouds are actually scraping along the trees. That's just moisture right off the tree canopy there, as it's already rained a little. A round of rain has already come through that camera. But yeah, where is that camera again? Let me find it here. Okay, 21. 16. It must be up in this little area. Yeah, it's north of Clarksville. So it's somewhere up in here. That is in the severe thunderstorm warning, but not, it's looking away from the severe thunderstorm warning right now. So that's that storm. This is a look here, cooler temperature, 70, basically 70 degrees. This is at Mountain View. This was a camera that was raining harder earlier. Or sorry, that's Mountain Home. That's going to be further to the north. That's going to be up here in this this rain above the severe weather. But yeah, that shows you what it's like right now in the Ozarks. Heavy rain, potentially some flash flooding. Some storms coming through the Branson area right now. Let's take a look at those real quick. Yeah, they're going to be on the northern side, so I think they're going to be less of a severe threat. we have to watch these new storms. These are going to be the more interesting ones that I think are going to be a little bit more conducive for tapping some of that localized vorticity and also being able to tap some of the warm, moist air. We've seen that here in that Fort Smith area, about 90 degrees. So yeah, this one is going to be a storm to watch. Hey, Sean, how's it going today? Hope you're having a good one. Yeah, Narda is now a hurricane. We'll get into the hurricanes here if we get some time, but let's see. Yeah, Category 1 should be no threat to land right now. It's basically just going to hang out here in the Pacific. But yes, it's going to increase in strength. Let's take a look real quick. Interested to see. Woo! Wow. That's a hurricane. Yeah, that is like textbook. Look at the satellite presentation from this. Okay, I just put all that on, but now I want to take it away. Let's see. Yeah, there is. Look at that under the forecast cone. Looks like there is maybe an eye starting to develop. There is a little weakness there in the cloud cover. So that may be the start of an eye formation. You can see these kind of textured look to the clouds over here. That's going to be some really high thunderstorm tops. That'll start to really wrap around this and really start to develop the eye wall. So yeah, it looks like this may be a rapidly intensifying. I have not looked at the data on this yet, but just by the presentation, this is maybe a rapidly intensifying hurricane out here in the Pacific. This is moving away from Mexico, so no worries there, but that is a hurricane. Yeah, look at the blow up of that. Yeah, it has an eye already as a Cat 1. And as a newer hurricane, it's going to go through some of these replacement cycles. The eye isn't going to be permanent. It looks like the eye actually started to peak out and then is actually being closed off again as these storms kind of surround that eye wall. So it'll start to solidify that eye wall as it continues to get stronger, but that is a hurricane. Wow. And yeah. It is. I think we talked about it in our morning brief, so definitely go read that if you if anyone's watching and hasn't looked at our morning brief. But we're going to lose the light here. Let's go back to our satellite images. This is Category 4 Gabrielle. Luckily, it passed east of Bermuda. Heavy surf, but it stayed east of Bermuda. Still a Cat 4 today, this afternoon. It's down a little bit from its peak at 140. It's now down to 130. Still max wind gusts up to 160. And it's increased speed. I think earlier today was about 13. It's now at 21 miles an hour. Central pressure 952. That is a nasty hurricane too. It is going to decrease in intensity. Cat 3 tomorrow, and then Cat 2 from there. It's maybe an issue for the Azores, and actually the new forecast cone has it affecting areas here in the Iberian Peninsula. This may be actually a tropical storm when it gets to Portugal. So keep an eye on that. If you know anyone over in Europe touring around, let them know about that. That is an interesting new forecast cone adjustment. And then we have two waves that we've also kind of talked about in our morning brief. But these are going to be interesting. Models have flipped back and forth on developing both of them, developing one or the other. But wave number 1 is this one back here. It's going to continue moving basically northwest. It may eventually start to turn towards Bermuda. So if you have interest in Bermuda, this would be like 5-7 days out. If it does develop, this could be a threat towards Bermuda if it starts to make more of that northward turn. A couple models have it continuing to the northwest. We'll have to see about that because it's also got this other storm This is the other wave. It's going to take a more of a low route across the Antilles and then over the Greater Antilles, and then it's over the Leeward Islands right now. But then it's going to get into the Bahamas, slow down, and then start to turn north. And interestingly, a lot of the models have it kind of going north. It's a little bit on the edge of uncertainty, so I don't want to go too far into it. But you can kind of see if you get a system out here in the Southwest Atlantic, it starts to run out of places to go. It really, the only way it doesn't affect the US is if it goes essentially kind of like to the northeast. If it starts to go more towards the north or continues towards the northwest, we start to get in some issues. And if it goes due west, that's also an issue for Florida. Although it doesn't look like that's, at least right now, it could do something like that. But more of the models pull it up, at least as of earlier today when I was looking at them. So this could be an issue eventually longer term towards the Carolina coast. Or it may also just scrape the Carolinas or also even go just offshore too. So there is possibilities here where the US does not get direct impact. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how these develop. This one may develop first. Well, obviously, yeah, they have like an 80 or 90% chance of development. This one has a 60, I think it was. So we may get a tropical storm or tropical depression out of this first. This one's going to be interacting with land across the islands here, and then eventually get into a little bit more prime real estate off the Bahamas. So we'll keep an eye on both of them. And I guess we'll keep an eye on Gabrielle still. I thought we were basically ready to write off Gabrielle, but yeah, it's going to affect the Azores as a Category 1, and then may affect Portugal or Spain as a tropical storm. For Gabrielle, there is now a threat, I guess technically a threat of landfall for Gabrielle in Portugal or northern Spain. So that's new. I haven't looked at the distinct forecast for that, but based on the forecast cone here, this would be the 28th. So 5 days from now, over on the Iberian Peninsula. This one I think has a less for the waves right now, the areas of interest. Actually, they're invest. This is 93L, and this is 94L. 93L I think has a lower impact for the U.S. at least right now. May have a better, more of an impact for Bermuda if it eventually makes that turn. 94L, if it can hold its own through this through the islands, I think it has a potential higher possibility of more of a direct impact. Again, especially if it goes more towards the north. And even if it goes northwest, it still, I think, has, if it gets pulled, it potentially could go into more like the Carolinas. So we'll see. But it also has less room to work. These are pretty warm waters, but it will have less time to develop here because once it starts to develop, it's going to be north of Hispaniola and north of Cuba. And basically it's going to start to develop, if it does, basically over the Bahamas. Anything that develops ahead of that will get kind of ripped apart by the Antilles there. So some interesting tropical weather for sure. And we'll keep you covered on that, especially as we get past some of the severe threats. We'll have some updates as we get a better look of things. Probably once this gets through Puerto Rico and Hispaniola and gets out here towards the Turks and Caicos, we'll do some more live streams for it. Just because it'll be so close to home, we'll actually be able to get some radar coverage for it. And yeah, it's going to develop. If it does develop, it'll be pretty close to home. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Western Pacific has more too. They don't list any area of interest, but just how the Western Pacific has been going, I think there's more to come there too. All right, let's get back to the severe weather. New storm going up over Tulsa. That'll be one to watch. Again, that's basically right back on the boundary, and you can actually see the boundary showing up right in there. So we'll see. North of Tulsa, I think we have less of a severe threat towards Joplin, towards Bartlesville, but Tulsa, basically south in Oklahoma, I think that's where we have our best chance of severe weather. So we will keep an eye on that one. Special weather statement, gusts up to 40. And yeah, small cell, but we will keep an eye on that one. And I want to switch cameras. Let's see here. There's a great look at the clouds there as that starts to clear out from the Fayetteville area. Let's see. We have a bunch of cameras in Tulsa too, so I just want to reposition a couple of those to get a better look at the Tulsa storm. It's going to be just north of Tulsa. We have to do some live editing here on this camera. It is raining in Tulsa now. Let's see, left. All right, that's a good look at Tulsa. Yeah, it looks like it's raining, even though the sun's out. Yeah, that storm is going to be just off. You can kind of see this clouds building, just basically off to the right, top right of our camera there. That's basically at downtown Tulsa. So that's going to be a good one there. Yeah, that storm's going to continue upscaling. So right along the boundary. Okay, new storms. These ones are quickly going severe, and there is some rotation in this storm. So this one is going to be, again, one to watch here. This is north of Fort Smith, north sides of Fort Smith along Highway 40, basically at the Oklahoma and Arkansas state line. It's going to be right along that rain-cooled boundary where we get the best chance of a tornado. These storms here, really non-tornadic right now. Little broad rotation in that storm, but yeah, that one is an area to watch. That area was a little tighter earlier. I think that's the original area of rotation that we watched. Basically, as we were setting up the stream, it crossed our camera position. So that has moved, not the camera you see right there, this camera. The camera here at I-49 mile marker 59, just south of Fayette Junction there. Great look there at the sky, if that camera can behave itself. Yeah, we'll watch. That one may try and tighten up. It's in a little bit more favorable position. There's a kind of, you can see a little bit of a supercell embedded in this cluster. And then, yeah, watching the southern end of this complex of storms essentially riding along the Boston Mountains. This storm looks very similar to the storm we were watching earlier. It's kind of a little mini supercell, has a little rotation in it, but just hasn't quite got the act together yet. Check the one behind it. The one behind it's very similar. So 2 cells there, some small hail cores, little mini supercells. You can see their little inflow notches right here. So they're small. They have some decent structure, but we'll keep an eye on those. Looks like that original storm over Mountain View is a lot less severe than it was earlier. Again, that's behind the rain-cooled boundary. There are more storms, but these really here across Mountain Home, Mountain View, Diamond City, Eureka Springs, Branson. I don't think pose as much of a tornado threat, at least not in the anytime soon. It's much cooler. Harrison, and then even back here towards Rogers, Bentonville, Springdale. We'll see about the areas into Oklahoma. Some of the areas in Oklahoma are a little less worked over. Woo. And keep an eye on those Tulsa storms. Look at this. This is really starting to blossom here into areas like Stigler, Whitefield, Quinton, down towards McAllister, Savannah, and then our newest severe warning, $half size hail around Stonewall. Little mini supercell going up there. And then more storms developing further south. Isolated risk even further south of some big hail. Not seeing a lot in those storms right now. And they are going to warn the 2 little cells we were just talking about for $half size hail. North of Russellsville and north of Clarksville in Arkansas there. So a couple new cells. That's a cool look out of the Tulsa cam. It's raining but still sunny, but you can see that storm growing on the horizon. Let's see. What are the next names after Gabrielle? After Gabrielle, Umberto, and then Imelda, I think it is, for the Atlantic hurricane season. And I don't know what it is. I'll have to actually check for the Pacific. I'm not as good with the Pacific hurricane names. All right, let me type that up for the East Pac. Narda and then Octave and Priscilla are the next ones in the East Pac. After that, Raymond, Sonia, Tico, Velma, Wallace, Xena, York, and Zelda. That would be the East Pac names. And then while I'm here, Umberto, Imelda, Jerry, Karen, Lorenzo, Melissa, Nestor, Olga, Pablo, Rebecca with a K, Sebastian, Tanya, Van, and Wendy are the storms remaining in the Atlantic hurricane season. So yeah, I think we'll get through at least a few of those names. It's been such a quiet, well, what happened to the camera here? Let's reload it. There it goes. May just needed a reload. Yeah. It's been a little abnormally quiet for the Atlantic hurricane season, although it does seem to be picking up at least now, and we'll have you covered for that. Look at this shot. Put this on an Arkansas, welcome to Arkansas poster. We got the sun rays shining through and then the storm off to the right. That's just, that's a pretty look. This is looking westbound. obviously says there. You can read that too. This is at the Arkansas-Oklahoma state line. But that is going to be looking basically towards that newest severe warning cell. A little bit of wind showing up in this cell now too, just to the north and west sides of Fort Smith. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Yeah, that camera is basically right here at Van Buren. So just in the warning polygon for that storm. And again, keeping our eye on a couple of these other severe warning storms here in Arkansas, particularly now that looks like the rain-cooled boundary has pushed a little bit further south. It looks like these are the new storms that are riding along that rain-cooled boundary. So that would make sense that those are the current severe warning storms. This one, this cluster of storms will be very interesting here. It's kind of now started to tuck itself behind the rain-cooled boundary. And then as it continues to work east, it's going to get into even more rain-cooled air. So we'll really have to kind of see this. Those storms were the stronger storms when we started the stream and when we were setting up the stream. But yeah, as we get into areas here, Flippin County, 69 degrees, east wind. Areas around Harrison, 67 with a east-southeast wind. So yeah, it becomes a little less favorable for severe storms in northern Arkansas right now. Yeah, not an expert on typhoon season, but in the Western Pacific, but other than kind of casually following the Category 5, basically the super typhoon, the last couple days over the Philippines, hurricane hunters. There were not our U.S. hurricane hunters, but like hurricane storm chasers were on some of those islands that rode out the Category 5 super typhoon over the Philippines. And I think some of those are actually now on to the mainland China. We don't have that data here. But yeah, that may impact southern China. So I think, yeah, I think I saw the Hong Kong airport was closing the next few days. So yeah, I'm not a big expert on the Pacific with the typhoons, but yes, it has been active. I believe it is longer because there were typhoons before the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific got going. Taking a look at a couple of these storms, I'm just kind of checking over most of these storms. A lot of them are actually behaving themselves pretty decently, which is nice. But let's see. This will be an interesting camera to watch. This is at basically at McAllister. So we have storms building from behind this camera. This is on 69. So, which is why I think it's not getting a great reception right now. But this camera, I think, is just behind some of these storms. They're coming up from behind the camera. So we'll keep an eye on that one too. Storm near Stonewall is getting a little feistier, $half size hail. There is a little bit of a area of rotation here along Highway 3 between Stonewall and Tupelo here in eastern Oklahoma. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Where are we getting radar? We're getting radar data out of OKC. So yeah, it's a little bit broad and high, but closer to the OKC radar, we can see that front basically extending through here. So you guys are good in OKC this evening. It's going to be more of an eastern Oklahoma and also southern Oklahoma threat. Again, there's a look at Tulsa right now. Rain starting to come down in the Tulsa area with storms building through Tulsa. Go back to that. That's our highest area of impact right now, at least population-wise. A couple little cells, Shady Grove down towards Sand Springs, and then just north of downtown Tulsa over here, basically right where our camera is. That's where we're getting some lighter rain just on the north side of Tulsa, but heavier rain here back towards the Lodge and Retreat, and then also back along 64 towards Westport. Again, you can see the frontal boundary. This one is right along that frontal boundary. That's going to be one to watch. It's kind of latched onto the frontal boundary, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Both those cells are kind of little mini supercells, but not showing a lot of rotation right now. Got a new warning here for considerable threat for 70-mile-an-hour winds as we start to see that that bulge surge out here. We're not going to get a great look at the wind profile just based on where the radar is and how the storms are moving. They're moving perpendicular to the radar beam, but we can see that bulge of the storm look here, especially in the reflectivity. So that gives us a good indication here of some pretty punchy winds. These may have been reported. Let me see. Now, radar indicated. So 70-mile-an-hour winds coming into the areas here, especially north of Ozark in Arkansas, up along Highway 23, and near our one camera. All right. Lots of cameras. We got you covered with cameras today. Yeah, this is up towards Edwards Junction, out ahead of these storms. So we'll keep an eye on that one up here in the Boston Mountains. And then here's a look at Ozark right now. It's sunny in Ozark. I don't know if that storm's going to get that far south. So we'll keep an eye on that one. It seems to be more going east, east-southeast rather than just like diving to the south. So I don't know if it's going to take that turn, but we'll keep an eye on it. But this camera is basically at the Ozark exit at 23 and looking westbound. So we are looking generally towards the storms, but we'll keep an eye on those. And then north of Russellville and north of Clarksville, these are two little interesting supercells. $half size hail. It looks like the hail has maybe come down a little bit based on reflectivity in that second storm. This one still is pretty feisty. You can see the hail core in those purples near Treat, Simpson, and Freeman Springs. That's on Highway 7 north of Russellville, and that is one heck of a highway. There are like switchbacks. It's a 2-lane highway. State Route 7 goes up to some really amazing wilderness areas and lookouts. There's really high elevation lookouts out here, but very similar view to this view. This is not Highway 7, but very similar look across the Boston Mountains. I would not want to drive that in a severe thunderstorm. That's why there are some chasers out here today, but there's not a lot. For a lot of chasers, this tornado watch is basically in a no-go zone north of Highway 40 and east to Highway 40, or east especially of I-49. Like this area here is where a lot of chasers just won't go. And even down here, once we get into the Ouachitas, like that's just some really rugged terrain too. So, yeah, some chasers kind of keep right along the I-40 corridor and basically cancel out like these two areas right there. So, yeah, not a lot of chasers will chase down in this area or up in here. So the good news is there's not as much chaser convergence like there are in some of those storms in Kansas and Oklahoma where there's basically traffic jams. Still watching this storm. Tornado possible tag. It does have some rotation near Clinton, and that's coming over towards Shirley, Grieger's Ferry, Heber, Heber Springs or Heber Springs. Now, eastern Arkansas, like this area, Little Rock, up towards Searcy, up towards Walnut Ridge, Jonesboro, Forest City, north and east, or north of Memphis, up towards Truman and Blytheville. That area is actually really decent chasing. It's agriculture. It's pretty flat along the Mississippi floodplain. A few little hills in Jonesboro with Crowley's Ridge, but like that area is good to go. So some chasers may kind of hang out here. That's what I would do if I was chasing this. I would probably just, even though your best tornadoes, yeah, you could probably go along 40 to Fort Smith and then follow it and maybe just get out ahead of these if they come off the higher terrain of the Ozarks. Like this storm here up towards Clinton, just wait for it down here near Searcy and Bald Knob, and it'll come to you in much better terrain. Let's see, Oklahoma. Yeah, the roads are staying dry in the Tulsa, at least for now. Yeah, this camera is usually a good camera, but it's not behaving itself right now. Kind of keeps freezing up. But it is starting to rain here. Yeah, there's a good shot. Coming into McAllister and Savannah in Oklahoma. That one's just not behaving itself, which is like the only camera in that area. Cameras get a little sketchy. This is some really rugged terrain too in eastern Oklahoma, like Havener, down towards Broken Bow. Also a little bit of an area that needs a bit of a radar hole too in southern Oklahoma. Wouldn't be surprised if more of these storms get some severe warnings. Looks like the hail cores are coming up here south of McAllister, and then also right near our camera, south of Savannah near Kiowa and Pittsburgh. Again, wouldn't be surprised if we get some severe warnings out of these cells. They look very similar to our cell that's severe warned. See if we can get them all in the same shot. The other one is a little more of a textbook supercell. It does have a little bit of rotation. Not as much anymore, but hail core there. I think there's a hail core there along 69 and another hail core just south of McAllister. But wouldn't be surprised if any of these storms could drop some quarters to $50 size hail in that area from McAllister down towards Colgate and east of Stonewall. And we have gone severe with other cells near Stigler. 60-mile-an-hour winds, quarter-size hail, maybe in some of those. Don't see a ton of hail in those, but we'll keep an eye on it. A little bit of rotation in that cell near Stigler, so we'll keep an eye on that one. And then this cell's kind of behaving itself for now. Quarter-size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Interesting. All the cameras kind of look the same. They're not super covered in the rain, but you can see the rain is starting to fall here at the state line. And then we do have the considerable threat, especially north of Ozark. Again, I don't think it's coming towards Ozark. I think it's more an issue further to the east in some really rugged terrain. But we do have these little mini supercells. They're actually going to look like split a couple of them because one is less than the other. This one is being warned for $50 size hail and 60-mile-an-hour winds. That lead cell of the two there, get them both in the frame. This one does have some larger hail, golf ball size hail. So now being warned separately with a considerable threat. That's going to be continuing areas like Hector, Simpson, over towards Tag, Austin, and Stumptoe. Again, that's north of Russellville. Really rugged terrain. I would not want to run into golf ball size hail up on Highway 7. Freeman Springs, Simpson, you guys are in line for some pretty nasty hail there. At least it's not a very large cell. And then it does have some rotation on it. Anytime we get larger hail, it's going to have a mesocyclone with some rotation. This one's still kind of broad, but it has gotten a little more vigorous just in the last few minutes. It's over Highway 7 right now, and that's going to continue moving south and east, mostly through, again, some really rugged terrain. That's Johnson, Van Buren, Conway, and Pope counties in central Arkansas. And let's see. It's such a small cell. Instead of warning just the area of rotation, I'll warn kind of the area of rotation and the area of hail east at 30. Yeah, luckily there's not many communities out here, but there are a couple. Tag 7 minutes, Solo 8, Retta about 13 minutes, Stumptoe about 28. That's really basically, and Tag about 6 minutes or less. Let's see, Retta, so anywhere in the East Fork Wilderness area, about 13 minutes as well. That lightning I just saw on our camera there? May have been. Just out of the corner of my eye. They have now added the tornado possible tag for this lead area of severe storms. Kind of a broad area of rotation in here near Clinton and Shirley. We mentioned that one earlier. A little bit more of maybe a concentrated area right in there. So we'll keep an eye on that one. It's kind of right on the leading edge. So this storm, although it has some broad rotation in it, it's kind of a weird look right now. It doesn't have that traditional kind of supercell look. It looks actually like it would have more of a bowing feature of wind. So keep an eye on that one either way for some gusty winds, but also just behind that leading edge where we could have a little area of circulation starting to really kind of tighten up, coming towards Fairfield Bay, Greer's Ferry, and Heber Springs or Heber Springs. Yeah, those two cells are looking a little more interesting now. Kind of a big mess of storms with a lot of overlapping warnings just because they're not. Yeah, they're really just kind of training along that boundary, which is interesting. Yeah, that is an interesting look. Okay. I had to clear my nose. Yeah, these fall allergies this time of year, not very fun. All right. Nothing. We haven't missed anything, so that's good. I was pretty close to the camera, but just in case. Let's take a look at this storm. Still has some interesting rotation. They've actually backed off the tornado possible tag. I think because of just it's a bit more of a shear line at the moment. There is a couple pockets in here that are a bit more interesting. There's almost a comma head that's developed. Again, wouldn't be surprised if this starts to accentuate some higher straight line winds, but within that, there is a little bit of an area of rotation coming back here towards Shirley. There's also a little bit of a leading edge area of rotation, but that has backed off some. So a couple areas of rotation. They don't look particularly healthy right now, but just ones to watch. If I had to watch one versus the other, I'd probably say it'd be the little comma head that's kind of back in there under the rain, but the one near Shirley. So we'll keep an eye on those. Little surprised they took away the tornado possible tag, but let's go for this one. Still a mini supercell in here, crossing a Highway 7 in Arkansas near Simpson, coming towards Solo, Lost Corner, Austin, Stump Toe, Walnut Grove, and Retta. Rotation in here on the south side between Tag and Retta. And yeah, pretty decent area of circulation. And a small mini supercell with some golf ball size hail. And then behind that, very similar looking storm. It's kind of getting a little bit scrambled into the rest of the complex of storms. That may give it a little brief nudge to develop a quick spin. We've seen that sometimes before. If it would be over this area near Katy Knob and Gillen Settlement, coming towards Woods Mountain and Pilot Knob, just north of Strawberry, north of Mount Vernon, Arkansas. So we'll keep an eye on that one. That may have a brief window to really tighten up some quick spin with the kind of cluster of storms that's coming in behind it. Yeah, we'll see about that. This actually, look, when I was coming back to the camera, has an interesting look when I put it into motion. You can really see these storms are riding along that boundary, but also kind of tapping those westerlies as they kind of get up into the atmosphere. But you can see here some of these squiggly lines closer to the radar site that are moving northbound. That shows those low-level southerly winds that are pushing out towards these storms. Again, there is some convergence along here. Further north, there's easterly winds in the 60s. So still a really interesting dynamic environment. I think the window for tornadoes is reduced a little bit. And I kind of said that in the very beginning. I don't think there's much of a tornado risk, at least right now, across the northern part of this watch area. So we'll see if they trim any of it. They may be waiting for the front to kind of work through. Again, we're watching storms in the Tulsa area. Non-severe right now, but some storms going up in Tulsa, basically right along the frontal boundary. And again, north of Tulsa, it also gets really marginal for severe weather up towards Pawhuska, Nowata, and Bartlesville. It's in the 60s. Tulsa and points south and east, it's in the upper 80s to near 90, especially across this area in southeast Oklahoma. And then, yeah, watching these storms here for some hail. In this area here around McAllister. So a couple areas of hail is possible. Looks like the severe thunderstorm's coming down a little bit on that cell north at Colgate. A little bit of a, I was just going to say, a little bit of a left split there. You can see that little cell kind of broke off the original area of severe warned storm, the little mini supercell there. That's actually now going to get a warning for $50 size hail. And then we've also, looks like, seen some clustering here. But a couple hail cores, I wouldn't be surprised if these get warnings as well. There could be some $50 size hail in this cell south of Savannah, and then the one south and east of McAllister. That original supercell does not look that impressive anymore. Left splits tend to not to produce tornadoes either, so even if that one upscales, likely less of a tornado threat with that left split. Some big hail in the Dallas-Fort Worth area earlier this week or this weekend. Yeah, I guess it was this weekend. We'll watch for some isolated large hail into North Texas today, with a couple of those cells getting a little feistier now, north and west of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro. Particularly that one here near Sunset and Alvord. Some wind in there too, and potentially some hail near Sunset. So we'll keep an eye on some of those cells. We also had some severe cells into Tennessee and Kentucky earlier. A couple of those were tornado possible tags. This is the original cell, I think, that was a tornado possible tag. It was back here near Reagan. It's now east of Decaturville, towards Perryville, Mount Carmel, with a still a severe thunderstorm warning for quarter-size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Still has some rotation in it, but it's kind of weak, broad rotation. That's going to continue working south there towards Linden, south and east towards Linden and Flatwoods. And watching this area, the cluster storms back here in western Tennessee, western Kentucky, with some potential for an isolated damaging wind threat, particularly this area here, coming towards Murray, Kentucky, Hardin, and Benton. Wouldn't be surprised if that got a warning there, as it's already through Mayfield, with some gusty winds, maybe some small hail in there too. Further north in the Ohio Valley, things aren't as conducive for severe weather. We do have storms into central parts of Illinois, southern parts of Illinois, maybe pushing eventually into areas around Louisville, Evansville, and then up towards Terre Haute along the I-70 corridor between really right now Terre Haute and St. Louis. It's not a fun ride along I-70, Effingham, Vandalia, Greenville, non-severe storms up that way. There's even storms all the way up here into southern parts of Ontario. A couple severe warnings. Couple damage reports coming in here. Let's see. Metal roof blown off a hospital, power poles damage. Photos via amateur radio and media. That's in Salisaw, Oklahoma. When was that? 5:02. Just about 15 minutes ago. So that's a nasty storm. Take a look at that. Yeah, there is some wind. There's pockets of wind in there. Some broad rotation, but yeah, just not seeing a whole really ton of concentrated areas of rotation. These storms are kind of outflow dominant here at the moment. You can see a little bit of the outflow boundary in here. So they're going to have a little bit of a struggle really tapping into some of that low-level shear, especially if this boundary pushes out south of I-40. The storms back here in Oklahoma are a little less outflow dominant, so they have a little better chance, I think, of a quick spin-up, basically in this line right in here between Fort Smith down towards McAllister. So we'll keep an extra close eye on those storms. And then the other storms I think we have to keep an eye on are these storms here. These two little lead mini supercells. They both have shown rotation at times. Considerable threat for golf ball size hail and $half size hail. This one has a chance, I think, to have a quick spin up with the nudging that's happening from the cluster storms that's now catching up to it. So we'll keep an eye on both of these. You can see a little bit of that clear inflow. They're maybe riding a little too close to each other, especially this secondary cell. It's kind of riding along the boundary, but it's in a rain-cooled environment from the cell out ahead of it. This cell has some hail in here coming towards East Fork Wilderness area, and then the other cell north of Clarksville with some hail. We'll see. This one I think has maybe the best potential in the near term for a tornado out of all the cells. So let's keep an eye on that one. And yeah, both of these I think maybe our best tornado potential right now. You can see the winds going towards the radar here, going away from the radar. The rotation tucked up right in that little inflow notch. And then the other cell still has broad rotation going towards the radar and away from the radar, right around Highway 27, just north of Hector. But this one has gotten a little bit more intense, a little bit brighter greens with the brighter reds. And yeah, it's right in that little inflow notch. So that is a decently conducive environment for a tornado there. It's coming across Woods Mountain and Pilot Knob. And then here's a look out of Clinton after that storm went through a little bit ago. This is a severe warning storm. Had a tornado possible tag on it. It's still not showing much, though, at least at the moment. It's more of a shear line with a pretty good surge of wind now coming across Fairfield Bay, Greer's Ferry, and Hebner Springs, or Heber Springs. Sorry. Heber Springs. It's now north, or it's east of Clinton along Highway 65. So the 65 corridor you can see above me there with a little better travel now. Still some heavy rain back towards that Clinton area. But actually you can see the sun's coming out just a little bit, some peaks of sun. And then we can't forget about our friends in Colorado. Just taking a look at the latest out of maybe about 10 minutes ago. So actually get another image here, probably momentarily. But it looks like the snow has picked up a little bit just in the last little bit. You can see, yeah, kind of bursts of snow. It kind of gets a little clearer, and then the visibility drops a little bit and then picks back up. So it's just some bursts of snow, but it looks like a little latest burst has kind of worked through. Very picturesque with the heavy wet snow sticking on the trees in the highest elevations of the Colorado Rockies right now. And again, that there it is. My audio wasn't on, I don't think. We were just looking at the kind of bursts of snow that have gone through. The visibility changes there at Dakota Hill, about 11,000 feet. Yeah, pretty good snow for Colorado, especially this early in the season. So we'll keep an eye on those Colorado cams with that winter weather advisory. But there's our Clinton camera. The storm is looking a lot less healthy here as it continues to work east. Still has some rotation in it, but not an imminent tornado threat likely. These are, I think, our most vigorous little cells. These two little lead supercells. Again, this one's able to maintain a little bit stronger recirculation, still showing up in there. And then we can still see the winds in this cell near East Fork. And this one, they're just extending the warning, but that's for Johnson and Pope counties, moving east at 35. And they have backed down the considerable threat in that storm around Ozarks, so that's good to see. Talked about this one a few minutes ago, that cell north and east of Sunset in Texas. It's going to be a severe thunderstorm warning for $half size hail now. That's going to be approaching Gainesville, Texas, north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, basically along the Red River with Thackerville, Oklahoma. So we'll keep an eye on those cells. And some of those could get a little feisty down in extreme southern parts of Oklahoma too. there's a look at the McAllister area. You can see the storms off to the south and east, just on the top right of our screen. Still rain, though, coming down in that camera. That camera has kind of managed to dodge, I think, the largest hail with, yeah, the storm, most of the concentrated area of severe weather just off of this camera, just to the south and now pushing to the east. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets a severe warning east of McAllister. Yeah, this cell here is pretty nasty coming towards the... Oh, there we go. Look at that. Ping pong ball size hail. James Collin Wildlife Area. Wilburton, Quinton, Quinta, up towards Stigler. That is a nasty cell, which I believe is probably off to the right of our camera there. Up that darker area, up in the top right of the camera, that's looking towards that cell. So far, these Tulsa storms are behaving themselves. A lot of lightning in that storm that's just over the Tulsa area. And yeah, the rain has picked up as that storm is now really pushing into Tulsa. So there's a great look at that. This camera had a really interesting mix of sun and rain for a while. New severe thunderstorm warning for Perry and Wayne counties in Tennessee. Some pretty heavy rain. A lot of lightning in this cell now, too. Still not a lot of rotation, so these cells are behaving themselves back here. Like some new cells also going up here in the flash flooding observed warning around Branson. That's southwestern Berry, Stone, and Taney counties. In southwest Missouri, law enforcement reported flash flooding. 3 and 5 inches of rain. So more storms there in the Branson area. Those are going to slide through south of Springfield. There is a random, as there always seems to be, there's a random tornado possible tag in Florida today. It's near Pine Hills and basically the Orlando metro. Oh yeah, there's a little burst of a area. See that spin right there? And in Florida, like two little radar scans of some rotation like that can sometimes drop a tornado. So we've seen those before in Florida. The weak tornadoes just form very, very briefly with the boundary collisions of sea breeze fronts and storms that are just lingering over each other. You can see how it just kind of popped up in just a scan or two and then is dissipated. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in this area. There's maybe a brief weak tornado just by what we've seen in Florida before. But yeah, interesting. Severe thunderstorm warning continues there. Oh yeah, it was like cell mergers and splitting. Yeah, Florida is a really unique storm environment. Look at that. Sun's out and it's pouring rain. With that small cell over Tulsa. About 9 miles wide. It's only about, or length is about 9 miles, but it's only about 3.5 miles wide. So yeah, very small cell, but a punchy one. A lot of lightning in it. Over the Tulsa metro, over downtown. West Tulsa, Tulsa, out towards White City, Gracemont, Diller's Landing, the Hillcrest Medical Center, and out along Highway 64. Basically, if you're headed out of town here at 5:30 Central Time, you're going to run into some pretty heavy rain, a big burst of heavy rain. But it's not going to last very long. Look at the sun coming out there. Probably a rainbow. I don't think we're going to get to see it here, but likely a rainbow in the Tulsa metro there. And yeah, those storms are right along the frontal boundary. 5:32, we have 12 severe thunderstorm warnings. If you're just joining us, it's a very complex environment here, kind of a conditional tornado threat. We haven't seen any tornado warnings. We've had a couple severe thunderstorm warnings with tornado possible tags, looked at some areas of interest. But even without the tornadoes, we've had an interesting afternoon. A lot of meteorology in it. We've looked at analyzed some radar data, analyzed some wind profiles, looked at the convergence along the boundaries with the different wind directions and things. So we've done actually quite a few things today. It's been a fun stream, even without the tornadoes. And you don't have to have tornadoes to get a fun and entertaining stream, especially when we're adding some of these meteorological elements into the stream. And we talked hurricanes and our tropical update earlier. So yeah, it's been a pretty eventful stream so far. Very cool look out of the Tulsa area. And this is an interesting look too out of the Clinton area. The sun has come out behind the severe thunderstorm. Still looking here at the severe thunderstorm just north of the Fort Smith area, working generally towards these cameras. So keep an eye on that one. Look at the outflow boundary with some gusty winds now coming across Ozark in Arkansas. Bit of a shelf cloud look there as that storm has sunk to the south. A little bit more of a supercell look on that storm. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Yeah, and you can see the gusty winds have picked up in that storm. Ah, I found it. There we go. We can see the rainbow. If we look east on the Tulsa camera here, back up just near the Oklahoma Transportation sign here, that is the rainbow. You can see, let me blow it up here for you. Let's take a look. So there's the rainbow. You can see back there, just on the top kind of left corner of the screen. A lot of severe weather, but it's important to take admire the beauty of weather as well. So we're here to hopefully warn people, to educate people, but yeah, it is interesting to just kind of stop, take a breath, and just enjoy the beauty of some storms. This one is a small storm, non-severe, with some gusty winds, maybe some vigorous lightning at times. We'll keep an eye on this camera. This should be a better camera to capture any lightning too. And yeah, a very picturesque rainbow there showing up on our cameras. So yeah, even though this is supercell, it's likely not imminently tornadic. You can see the outflow boundary has really surged out ahead of this, gusted all the way through the I-40 corridor. So we'll continue to bounce around here. Here's the I-40 corridor at Ozark, with the little bit of a shelf cloud kind of look crossing the camera with some gusty winds. But yeah, as long as that outflow boundary has surged to the south, it's going to be very hard to produce a tornado out of that supercell. South of that boundary, we have winds from the south and warm, moist air in the 90s today across the Arkansas River Valley from Fort Smith down to Little Rock, and then back up towards Tulsa. It was also in the 90s today. But yeah, with that outflow boundary surging out across here, that's going to be much cooler air and outflow dominant air, and just not going to get those that warm, moist air that's needed to really fuel low-level rotation that's needed for a tornado. So so that supercell is going to be a severe warn cell, $half size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Yes, you can get hail. Yes, you can get damaging winds out of an outflow dominant storm, but tornado threat, very minimal for that particular storm. And anything that's basically along and south of this outflow boundary. So, or along and north of the outflow boundary. So not tornadic. This storm, not tornadic. Where you have to watch is right where the outflow boundary connects to the storm. That's an area that could have a more concentrated area, and that's an area that could tap some of those low-level jet and the warm, moist inflow. So from about Fort Smith west and south, that's where we have to worry a little bit more of a tornadic environment for these storms. There is some rotation in this cell near McCurtain with ping pong ball size hail now showing up. This is going to be coming towards Panama, Shady Point, Rock Island, and basically the Oklahoma state line south and west of Fort Smith. So that is a supercell that we do have to watch. It's organized fairly quickly near the McCurtain, and wouldn't be surprised if that one continues to show some more vigorous rotation. And then these cells that are now pushing south and east of McAllister have some mini supercell characteristics, some rotation also showing up in those. But mostly right now, those are considerable threat for golf ball size hail between Quinton and Wilburton, and then just north of Red Oak in Oklahoma. Yeah, not a lot of rotation showing up in this kind of scattered cluster storms in the McAllister area, but some hail is likely in those storms. And back here, we have $half size hail approaching Gainesville, and then a new cell that's gone up for $half size hail south and west of Sunset. So Sunset may be under the gun here in Texas for another round of some hail. Further to the east, we do have some severe weather here all the way into northern Arkansas, northeastern Arkansas. This little mini supercell is still ongoing. It was a little better organized earlier. It's going to be kind of running a little bit out away from some of those more volatile ingredients. But we will keep an eye on that one as it heads towards Diaz and Newport. They're going to downgrade the cell that's come through Clinton areas now around Greer's Ferry and Heber Springs. It's looking a lot less severe. There is still little rotation on that, but we'll keep an eye on that one. And then these are those two other little supercells, little mini supercells we've been kind of following the last probably hour or so. One still has actually decent rotation in here. That's going to be in that area now east of Hector. And then the other one is the one that I kind of pegged as more of a chance of a tornadic development. It's a little bit outflow dominant right now. We can see the surge of this green with the surge of red on the backside. It's trying. I think it's making an attempt here at going tornadic. So we'll keep a very close eye on that storm. The hail sizes have come down just a little bit. Yeah, see, that one doesn't look as tornadic here as I switch radars out of Fort Smith, but there still is rotation in here over the Pilot Knob, Waldo Mountain, and approaching areas like Simpson that already got hit with the first cell and the hail there that was about $half size. Or was it golf ball, I think, when it was worn back by Simpson? It's a fairly concentrated area of severe weather today, so I can actually zoom out and get basically everybody, all these warnings in the same viewpoint there. So that's interesting. Yeah, these storms are developing basically back along the front, and then there's the rain-cooled outflow boundary that these storms are riding along here. So it's going to be out ahead of that rain-cooled boundary and out ahead of that front that are essentially the the areas that have the best chance of any tornadic potential, and then localized within the new outflow boundaries that these storms have been pushing out. So particularly the storms along I-40 working kind of over the same area to the east, they have pushed that outflow boundary basically along the I-40 corridor. So yeah, I think there's going to be minimal chances at tornadoes now across the northern parts of Arkansas. Still looking at that rainbow in the Tulsa area with those storms as well. Okay, a couple new cameras put up. Here's our Arkansas camera at the Arkansas state line with Oklahoma. This is south of Fort Smith. I wanted to get that one set up as probably one of our more mature looking supercells right now. Has really kind of gone up near McCurtain in Oklahoma. We can see here the body of the storm kind of fanning out. And then back here, it actually has a pretty pronounced little hook with a little bit more of an actual stinger than we've seen in a lot of the other hooks today. So this is more of a better presentation of a supercell. It's getting warm, moist inflow in here. It's got a little bit of cool air on the rain-cooled air on the rear flank downdraft. Starting to show some broad rotation. It hasn't really localized that rotation yet, but as the mesocyclone gets a little stronger, it starts to tighten up, and then that's when tornado genesis occurs. Probably to get that, we need a little bit stronger of a rear flank. We're starting to see the winds going towards the radar, but weaker winds we're seeing winds going away from the radar. We're not seeing as strong of winds going towards the radar yet. So this is still broad area of rotation, but based on the velocity scans, and then especially based on the reflectivity, this one is starting to mature itself. So we'll have to see as that one continues to work towards the east. Essentially, the camera is looking towards that storm. This camera here, basically at 71 and 540 there at the state line. Within that camera, there's also storms working in from the north, moving kind of south and east. So we'll see about those. Yeah, right now, that outflow boundary, they are all kind of behind that outflow boundary. So the only chance of a tornado right now is where essentially that outflow boundary and those storms connect with each other. Just not seeing a lot of rotation in those storms right now. So severe thunderstorm warning for the Fort Smith area, quarter-size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and we'll keep an eye on that boundary for sure. And then further to the east, yeah, I'm still interested in these cells. They do have some rotation in here, but it's kind of broad rotation at the moment near Treat and Waldo Mountain, approaching Simpson along the Highway 7 corridor. That's another nasty cell. $half size hail potential in that one. And then over here, this cell is starting to struggle a little bit. Our lead supercell still has a little rotation in it, but it looks like the wind profiles come down. The size of this cell has shrunk, and also looks like the hail core has come down. So that seems to be a downtrending severe thunderstorm. Similar environment, this cell now below severe limits as it's worked its way through the Clinton area. And we can see Clinton here thanks to our iDrive Arkansas camera network. Getting a little bit darker again in the Clinton area. Clinton and points south of Clinton are under the severe warning for this kind of shrinking supercell. So might get a look at it from this camera perspective as it crosses 65 south of Clinton. We're looking that way, so we'll keep an eye on this camera as that cell closes in. Got a new warning a few minutes ago for that cell that's kind of all on its own in the cluster of storms in southwest or west central Tennessee. This one's had some broad rotation for a long time now, but it stayed broad. It's coming towards Hohenwald and areas like Topsy, Ashland, Kimmins, and Flatwood are in that new warning polygon. May get into a little more populated area here around Mount Pleasant, Summertown, and Columbia, so we'll keep an eye on that storm. It's certainly a severe supercell, but it's in a less favorable environment for tornadic development. Not many hail reports today. We've seen at least a couple verified hail reports, 1.5 inches in diameter in Washington County earlier this evening or late afternoon. I think the hail threat's going to be more minimal in this tornado watch area, especially these storms are starting to cluster together. Hail is going to be a bigger threat here from McAllister and points south, basically into the Red River Valley. That's where the storm environment's a little more conducive for large hail. And we've seen that today with already $half size hail in this cluster of storms near Gainesville and Munster, and then near Sunset. The tornadic environment should be less, though. So that's the trade-off. Less of a risk of tornadoes, higher risk of hail. And then, yeah, McAllister, we haven't seen any really vigorous tornadic storms in this McAllister cluster, but starting to see some more hail cores go up. So potentially in this area near Tishomingo, and then south of McAllister for some marginally severe hail could continue to upscale into some pretty severe hail. And then speaking of hail, this supercell that we just got diagrammed a few minutes ago, still seeing broad rotation in here, maybe a little tighter than it was just a few minutes ago. We'll watch that to tighten up, but it's now being warned for ping pong ball sized hail. There's our camera at the Arkansas state line. In the storms there, that's at Arkansas route, or that's at Arkansas, that's at the state line, sorry. This is the state line. This is in Ozarks, Arkansas, with the storms working in. This is our other state line camera on 540 on the south side of Fort Smith. It's going to be right there looking towards this storm. So this is a key camera as a developing supercell is working that direction. Looks like the cold front's really winning on these storms. You can see they have kind of fallen behind the cold front. They have their own outflow boundaries right now. Still seeing the rainbow though. Let's pull that back up. Yeah, there's the rainbow still in there, just behind the Oklahoma transportation sign. Oh, it just switched. Major update there. You can kind of see the rainbow still in there, but it's fading fast as those storms are actually dying out fairly quickly. Must have just updated there. I didn't realize that camera froze. Must have just froze for a couple minutes and just those storms have fizzled. within the reflectivity, you can see the cloud streaks in here, or the airflow a little bit, especially close to the radar site, dust and things, bugs and that kind of stuff get picked up in the radar, and you can see it sometimes. But you can see that air coming out of the west, northwest. That's going to be behind the cold front. There's also a kind of a surface low. Earlier it was near the Bartlesville area. It's probably here, basically at the tri-state, somewhere around Joplin, where Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri all kind of meet up. It's a weak surface low though, but yeah, you can see kind of that air diving in this way. So that's going to cut off, I think, a lot of that tornado threat across eastern and northeastern Oklahoma. It's looking like our conditional tornado threat with a lot of complex ingredients that needed to come together. We talked about that at the very beginning of the stream. It's looking like that may not be coming together all too completely. That doesn't mean we're not going to get a tornado warning. It just means, I think, the ingredients not coming together is going to limit the tornado potential, but also probably limit the strength of any tornadoes. As the watch actually noted, a couple of intense tornadoes being possible. We still could get some intense tornadoes, but the area of most favorable environment is starting to shrink fairly quickly. And we'll do a little live meteorology again on the again on the screen for you. So dew points here, plenty high in the 70s across the Arkansas River Valley. A little bit kind of worked over dew points, still decently high here, upper 60s across northwest Arkansas, southwest Missouri, and right along the frontal boundary there back towards Tulsa. A little bit less, mid 60s across some of the northern parts of Arkansas. But certainly these dew points down in here, low to mid 70s, that's going to be conducive enough for severe weather, but also potentially tornadoes. And then looking at some of the other ingredients, we got our wind direction. It's going to be very key here. We can see here across, again, the Arkansas River Valley, wind direction from the south pushing into these storms, and even a little bit southwesterly back here towards Texas. So we see some of that southwesterly flow. But yeah, southerly flow definitely out ahead of these. Again, from basically I-40 to the south, Russellville, Boonville, Little Rock, and just along that line, just to the southwest of Fort Smith. Back here, definitely cold front came through Oklahoma City. We can see northwest winds. Yeah, Tulsa's kind of right along the frontal boundary. We see more of a west-southwest wind. Okmulgee and Muskogee, we see a westerly wind. So that boundary is essentially like right in here. Somewhat like that. That's going to be the cold front. And then back here is where we have storms developed on a rain-cooled outflow boundary from the morning convection in the Ozarks. That's where we have easterly winds across much of the Ozarks right now and the Boston Mountains. That's going to kill any tornado threat across. The longer we go here, the more confident I am there's not going to be a tornado threat across northern parts of the Ozarks here, across areas like Branson, Mountain Home, Harrison, Eureka Springs, Springdale, Fayetteville. You would have to get some really quick boundary recovery, and it's not going to happen. The boundary's not going to just lift back up, even with the cold front kind of coming in. It's not going to be able to lift it. It's because it's a fairly weak low pressure, so it's not going to really be able to lift that boundary back. So tornado threat, I think, is really going to be limited for, say, this area right in here, essentially along and south of I-40. Temperature, we looked at that earlier too, but just kind of a, yeah, now a check about 2 hours later. Temperatures 60s and 70s across the Ozarks with that easterly wind. Still mid to upper 80s in the Tulsa area, so that's at least okay for some severe weather across Tulsa. But yeah, that rain cooled boundary is going to be like right kind of bulged in here like that. So these storms that are over Tulsa, they may have a brief chance at severe until they get into eastern Oklahoma. But once they push towards the Bentonville area, should be less of a severe risk. Yeah, rain cooled air across much of this area, Branson, Mountain Home, Mountain View, all in the 60s, where we have still upper 80s, close to 90 degrees at Fort Smith, at Hot Springs, at Russellville 88, Little Rock 90, and then further south in the 90s in southeast parts of Oklahoma, and 95 in Dallas today. Some are still hanging on in Dallas, that's for sure. Okay. Sometimes the frontal pictures are a little delayed, so I don't usually put it up too much. But it gives you a decent idea. This is where it was earlier, that kind of weak surface low. I think it's probably up in here now. But that gives you a rough look at where the boundary is. It's a little, I think, east of there now. It's probably more like this. So yeah, if that's lifted up, the new one's probably like this. And then this is a little more complex than just a straight line like it shows. But probably something like that. Ooh, I drew it wrong. Yeah, fronts aren't exactly straight either. And then especially it's not just a warm front, it's a kind of a warm front hybrid, warm front and rain cooled boundary. It's going to follow that rain cooled air. So it dips a little bit, I think, here past north of Fort Smith. But essentially that's kind of our look. So yeah, there is a little window. There's kind of a little bit of a triple point there where there's enough, I think, southerly flow and southwesterly flow with enough instability and the temperature still high right in there. There is a potential there for a couple severe storms. But yeah, I think it's generally going to be along this boundary and south. It's going to be like that area. Let's take a radar tour again. It's actually right at 6 o'clock. So we still have our supercell that's west of the Fort Smith area, around Panama, Shady Point, Cameron, Rock Island, and Spiro. $half size hail. Still has rotation in here. It's I think trying. It's still kind of broad, weak rotation right now, but we'll keep an eye on that one. That is at that's right here looking towards that storm. So it's starting to rain there on that camera. So we'll yeah, we'll be in this storm, at least on the front forward flank of it. So yeah, welcome to Arkansas there. They got the taking radar right there at the state line. Yeah, there we go. Back into the areas around Fort Smith. Just north of Fort Smith, severe warning storm, quarter-size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Basically all these storms right in here, potentially quarter-size hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. We can see that rain-cooled outflow boundary. These storms have pushed to the south of I-40 now. Only potential really for a tornadic spin would be right where the storms connect with the outflow boundary, but even then, this one's just about out ahead of it. So non-tornadic storm there, non-tornadic supercell there. So a little better. I feel more confident now for the Fort Smith area. And then we still have our little mini kind of lead supercells. These are both interesting. Yeah, here's the look out of Clinton. You can see that cell starting to come over the mountain there, right by the RDOT sign. There, just update it a little bit. But it's going to be in that area right there. Still a little mini supercell. Still does have rotation. Yeah, it actually presents decently well here. Looks like the eagle is flying here. The eagle wings, it's kind of V-notched right in here. And it has a pretty pronounced hook on it. This one even still, despite having a pretty good presentation, still has kind of weak rotation in it. But that's one of the better looking presentations we've seen actually today. So we'll see. It's coming generally towards B branch and south of Clinton. Here's Clinton up here where our camera is located. So south of Clinton along 65, keep an eye on this cell. Again, towards B branch. That one could produce a quick spin up. It's still a bit broad, but it's a decently tight area. It's also, I think, tight though because it's a small cell. And then there is going to be a small hail core in here. That's kind of also coming towards B branch. Surprised it doesn't have a tornado possible tag on it. This warning is for Van Buren, Conway, Pope counties. And it's moving east, maybe just south of east at 30. B branch about 20 minutes. Damascus about 20 to 25 minutes. So yeah, about 20 minutes to that Highway 65 corridor. That's a really well-traveled U.S. highway through Clinton there and then down towards the Little Rock Metro. So about 20 minutes to that area. Way out here, 60 minutes to Rosebud. Guy about 34, and then Formosa about 9 minutes. Yeah, nothing in there. This one still has some wind in it, coming towards Pangburn, Latona, Pleasant Plains, and Concord. It had some broad rotation in times, but that one is less severe than it was earlier. And then we still have the other supercell. This one also had a little bit of a broad area of rotation near Hector. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Two cells that have kind of gone side by side with each other, but both have had similar environment to work and have shown rotation that's gotten kind of tight, but it's still kind of weak rotation. So, yeah, we'll see. Those ones have been on my kind of really close keep an eye on list. The cell that's now coming towards Hector, across the Highway 7 corridor. It's now through Simpson, through Pleasant Valley, approaching Hector right now. Wow, look at a decent train cam here. Look at the engines. That's a big train. Those storms are basically nothing now. Look at that. Those storms are really back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 engines. Yeah, 6 engines on that. All right, here's a look at Clinton again. These are my two key cameras, I think, at the moment. Our Clinton camera, looking at that supercell, it's basically behind the mountain there, or the hill, behind the RDOT logo. And then our other iDrive Arkansas camera, thanks to iDrive Arkansas, amazing camera network. So if you do have travels in Arkansas, you can take a look at the iDrive Arkansas cameras and get road conditions and all that good stuff. But this is a camera is closing in on that supercell that's looking off into Oklahoma there at the Oklahoma state line. So a couple key cameras for now, as a lot of these storms have stayed just north of Highway 40 or I-40. And then the ones that are on I-40 are mostly general severe thunderstorms at the moment. This cell here near Coal Hill is kind of interesting. It's not particularly severe at the moment, noted by the special weather statement, but it has a little bit of an appendage now right near Hartman. And that seems to be where the outflow boundary wraps in. You can see the outflow boundary here down towards Branch and Ratcliffe, and then kind of arcs back into this area right in here. And sometimes you can get some tornadic circulation there, right where the outflow boundary pulls in. So that may be one to watch there at Hartman. That's near Clarksville and Coal Hill, Sulphur Springs. So we'll keep an eye on that cell. And yeah, still keeping a very close eye on these two supercells that are out ahead of the more rain cooled complex of storms. This one's right here over Gravel Hill, still with some rotation. And then Dallas, you're good to go right now in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Still very hot day. You can see the southerly breeze with the close to the radar here. But north of Dallas, this is along the Red River here. Some big hailstorms, $half size hail coming again through the areas around Sunset and Alvord, and then up towards Munster, Lindsay, Gainesville, approaching areas here around Thackerville with ping pong ball sized hail coming up here north of Sherman. Yeah, not seeing a lot of rotation in these cells. It's mostly gusty winds, golf ball size hail, ping pong ball size hail, that kind of hail. That's 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches. Yeah, they're probably all these cells in here, especially that one and that one, are capable, I think, of golf ball size hail. This cell had tighter rotation earlier. It's kind of broadened back out. It's kind of being influenced in that same environment. There's a lot of storms right in here now. It's not quite as discrete as it was earlier. And then very interesting here, you're going to see how the outflow boundary that's surging out of those cells to the north is going to run into this cell here. So we could get a brief moment of some added vorticity before that outflow boundary may undercut this cell completely. And on the snowy side of things, snow still coming down in the highest elevations of the Rockies, in the Colorado Rockies. This is at Dakota Hill, about 11,000 feet. We've been watching these cameras in the Rockies. Just a very picturesque scene there with the heavy wet snow sticking on the pine trees in this scene. Yeah, with 4 to 10 inches in some of the highest elevations, especially above 10,000 feet, in that 10,000 to 13,000 foot range. And then in the highest peaks above that 13,000 foot range, potentially 10 inches to a foot of snow, or even a little more. With the winter weather advisory going through at least this evening, wouldn't be surprised if they continue it just a little bit. Yeah, so this is an interesting look here. We're watching basically this rain-cooled frontal boundary from the outflow here may start to undercut this supercell. But before it does, I think it has a chance at there's actually a couple areas of rotation. There's one near Shady Point, and then one weirdly on this back nub. Those tend to not be as favorable, but a couple areas there showing up. So we'll see if that one tries to wrap up a little more vigorously before the rain-cooled outflow takes out the mesocyclone. Again, both of these lead supercells still do have some rotation on them. This cell, though, this cell is definitely on the downtrend. The lead cell that's approaching areas just south of Clinton, it's a shrinking cell. It also, the hail core seems to be coming down, and also its velocity. So I'm not seeing a lot of definition on the camera there at the Clinton camera. So we'll still keep an eye on it from the Clinton perspective. And then this supercell is getting a lot closer to this camera. Oh, the PD left. But this one still has some vigorous rotation near Retta, Walnut Grove, Stump Toe, coming towards Gobbler's Point. Definitely keep an eye on that cell. Some quarter-size hail, and also I think a wind threat is also developing. This one's starting to surge out a little bit through Hector, maybe approaching areas around Russellville. Yeah, the newest warning here around Mulberry, Ozark, east sides of Fort Smith, down towards Charleston and Branch. Severe warning, 60-mile-an-hour wind, quarter-size hail. Yeah, we're right here at I-540 looking towards that area of rotation, but not going to see much since we're now kind of in the rain. There was it. Flashed on, but then it went away for a second. That's supercell that we've been kind of following near Shady Point, getting a continuation there, 60-mile-an-hour winds, quarter-size hail. And there's the area of rotation. But it's starting to get kind of messy with the other storms interacting with it, and really kind of watching this rain-cooled boundary push in. I don't know if is that a new comment or did I just miss it earlier, but category for NARDA, I think it was a 2. I think they had, we were talking tropical weather earlier. Let's look at NARDA again. Yeah, they have it forecasted as a 2. As it kind of generally tracks westbound before it pulls to the northwest. It could, it could make a run at 3. Just, I haven't looked at the models on NARDA because it's really not a threat right now for anyone. Although some moisture long term may get pulled back up into California long term, like a couple weeks from now. And nothing as a system, just the remnant moisture. But based on based on what it was looking like a couple hours ago. Yeah, it is a well-structured hurricane, Category 1 right now. 85-mile-an-hour winds gusting to 105. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets Category 2. Yeah, they're saying by 1 a.m., so that's probably about right. Within the next few hours, that could easily be a Category 2 hurricane. So it may push major hurricane. Not really a forecast, more of a gut feeling for me. Within here, what is this? Yeah, like Thursday. Late Thursday into Friday, I think it could push where they have it reaching solid Category 2 strength. I think it could push Category 3 up in this kind of time frame. Just based on the look of it now, it is cranking. But again, no threat to land. Yeah, it's starting to develop an eye and an eye wall. The eye's still kind of shrouded there in the last couple scans, but you can still see the big blowup of convection around the eye, and then this textured look are some of the really tall thunderstorm tops overshooting the main layer of cloud. So that's why you see some shadows with that convection. But yeah, the eye is right in there. And yeah, this is starting to form a pretty solid eye wall. Just based on the visual representation of it. A couple of their stronger storms approaching areas here in Kentucky. A couple areas that have some special weather statements for gusty winds. These storms have all kind of behaved themselves, at least out here in the Ohio and Tennessee valleys, with the only exception this lead cell, actually a supercell that's had rotation at times, and it still does. Rotation going towards the radar and away from the radar. Basically along 412, east of Flatwoods, north of Ashland, approaching Hohenwald. So keep an eye on that cell still there in south central Kentucky or Tennessee. And then back here, they've dumped the warning in our cell near Clinton. That cell, again, continues to shrink. Still a mesocyclone. The mesocyclones will rotate for a long time, but not a tornadic threat right now. And the severe threat is really diminished. This cell, though, still showing some pretty good wind in here. Also some rotation in here, kind of broad still, but we've been following this rotation for a little while. North and east of Hector. That's going to continue here to work kind of in that same general area, south and west of Clinton. So we'll keep an eye on that cell. Back further to the west, this is just a big mess of some really heavy rain too. But yeah, these are still all outflow dominant storms across the Arkansas River Valley, across the 40 corridor from Clarksville, Coal Hill, Altus, Ozark, Mulberry, now east and south of Fort Smith. Once we get past Fort Smith, we lose the outflow boundary. So a little bit more volatile atmosphere, but these storms have all kind of just stayed in this scattered cluster and really haven't gotten organized discreetly. So still following a supercell approaching the Oklahoma-Arkansas border south of Fort Smith. That is our camera right there that we're looking at the Arkansas state line. And then further south, we've had some isolated hail, severe thunderstorm warnings between McCurtain and McAllister. It seems like those are on the downtrend right now, so we'll keep an eye on those cells. And then same for southern Oklahoma, near Tishomingo, Durant, and up towards Atoka and Antlers. Couple cells could have some hail cores, especially that one near Silo and Durant, and then also Caddo. Those two cells particularly could have some larger hail. And then back down here, we've had, it's not even one cell, it's like 2 or 3 cores They are all, I think, potentially capable of $half to ping pong ball sized hail. Just kind of generally all those three. That's coming towards Pottsboro, north of Sherman, Thackerville, yeah, ping pong ball, Munster, $half size to ping pongs, and now east of Sunset. So those are well north of Dallas by about 60 miles, and they're moving to the east, basically east northeast. So those are no threat to Dallas. Dallas, you will have to watch for some storms like these storms back towards Breckenridge and Abilene. So we'll keep an eye on those storms. May get an isolated hailstorm down there into kind of west central Texas. And then we still have we were watching the storms in the Tulsa area. Those have really backed off. One stronger storm near Pryor Creek. This is kind of back closer to the low, also back basically along the cold front. So it's going to run out of instability, I think, once it gets into the rain-cooled atmosphere further to the east into northern Arkansas. And it looks like a couple stronger storms potentially here south of Springfield. That is Marionville, Clever, Highlandville, Nixa, Ozark, and Sparta. Those have lifted off from the Branson area. Branson observed flooding. Law enforcement reported flooding in Berry, Taney, and Stone counties. And yeah, we talked about that in the very beginning. I actually kind of led with that. It doesn't get the attention, but basically this whole area in northwest Arkansas under flash flood warnings. Please turn around, don't drown. Please, if you're in a low-lying area, get to higher ground now while it's still light out. Before it gets dark, it's going to get very dangerous across the Boston Mountains and across the Ozarks with a lot of heavy rain. And again, I wouldn't be surprised, I think I mentioned that earlier, if we get some more flash flood warnings and flood warnings extending through the Ozarks in areas like Salem, Mountain View, Batesville, Cherokee Village, up towards West Plains. And yeah, still flash flood warnings and watches out for southern Missouri. So yeah, please turn around, don't drown. It's going to be a nasty night even after these storms clear out. This cell is still a very interesting cell. And I still think it's one of our cells that have the better tornado potential. One of our newest flood warnings, by the way, was a flash flood warning there for Sebastian, Sequoia, Haskell, and LaFleur counties in eastern Oklahoma, and also northwest Arkansas. That's with Doppler radar of 1.5 inches with an additional 1 to 2 possible. Yeah, northwest Arkansas, 1.5 to 3 inches of rain in that flash flood warning there. Trying to see the back of that storm that's pushing through the Arkansas state line here. Still raining pretty heavy there at the state line, but the circulation, now there's not much of one. That was back here towards Shady Point. There's actually a bit of a circulation here now, which is one of the things we mentioned earlier, how it'd be interesting to see how this cell interacts with that. Ooh, let's get out of the green. Interacts with this outflow boundary. The outflow boundary is now tucked back into the forward flank of this cell, which may actually produce a new area of rotation. You can see it's actually starting to kind of wrap through here. Um, yeah, that's an interesting little feature. It's getting a little bit tighter the last couple scans. So yeah, it may try and localize a new outflow boundary or a new area of rotation. Typically, you wouldn't see it kind of on the forward flank of a supercell. But yeah, this outflow boundary, actually you can see it even in the reflectivity, kind of works its way back into the heart of the storm now. Yeah, that's interesting. Still a little area of rotation back here near Cameron and Poteau, Oklahoma. So the original mesocyclone is still in here too. But yeah, this is another one that I kind of have really paid a closer attention to here in the last little bit. Along with this storm, some pretty good wind also showing up in this storm, passing through Hector, Atkins, down towards Greenbrier. Keep an eye on this storm. Yeah, there's definitely some convergence there. So let's see what this can do with the alpha boundary interacting with this supercell. And we're so close to the radar that's fairly low level, which is probably also why we're seeing that actually show up within the supercell on the reflectivity. I don't know if I've seen that before. That's super interesting. Yeah, there's a heavier band of precip that shows up right in there. The darker reds just kind of snaking through that cell. Super interesting. Hopefully no one's on Lake Texoma this evening. It's been a super hot day down here along the Red River Valley, so it's possible. It's still summer basically down here in Texas and Oklahoma. But this is a new severe thunderstorm warning for this cell that potentially could produce ping pong ball sized hail approaching areas between Whitesboro, Pottsboro, and south of Kingston. Again, that's along the Red River, Lake Texoma. Please get off the water. Still watching this cell. Still potentially trying to clear some inflow in here near Gilmore. This was the original area of rotation. Back up in here, and then kind of on its forward flank, kind of the cell that's out ahead of it as well. There's this area of rotation where the outflow boundary is wrapped into the cell. There's potentially a couple areas of spin in here that are really interesting and stuff we need to keep an eye on. Let's see if we have a camera that way. There's a look at McAllister still. All of our cameras there south of Fort Smith, they're pretty much in the precip, so it's going to be hard to see that area of rotation, especially while that lead one is in the precip anyway. This area in here between Hackett, Midland, and Greenwood, that's an interesting area. But the other area is in a lower populated area east of Shady Point, approaching the state line here towards Hartford. This one still has decent inflow, but still kind of a broader level area of rotation. Trying to get a better eye on that storm that's north of Atkins. Just not getting. Most of our cameras are along the Highway 40 kind of corridor, the river valley. Here is a look at that area right around Atkins. You can kind of see the shelf, and also it's getting really windy there. This is looking east southeast, so away from the meat of the storm, but you can really see the kind of the shield approaching here. Yeah, this one is also a little bit outflow dominant. There's a little bit of a boundary right in there that surged out through Atkins, so that part of the storm is not going to be tornadic, but potentially where this outflow boundary wraps in, this is where it has some access to some inflow. And with the storm out ahead just dying off, that actually gives it a little bit more uncontaminated inflow out to the south. So we'll have to see about that. The only thing there is there still is an outflow boundary here from those storms prior. So this one has a better chance of a tornado than some of the other cells, but I think it has a better chance if it can dive a little more towards the south and get out of the outflow rain cooled air. Until then, it's most likely going to stay a wind-driven risk. Still some broad rotation up here, though, that we have to maintain an eye on. That's coming towards Twin Grove and B Branch, generally south of Clinton. Also, generally kind of towards the Greenbrier area. So, and as this kind of sinks east-southeast towards Greenbrier, it may get in a slightly more favorable environment. So, we'll keep an eye on that cell. Newest warning north of this cluster of storms for some $half size hail in Oklahoma here over the Robert Kerr Reservoir. That may get into the Fort Smith area with some of that hail. And then this was the most interesting cell, I think, for the last few minutes. Still seeing some gusty winds in here. This is where the outflow boundary connects to the storms. So there's some broad rotation in here. It doesn't look actually as tight as it did just a couple minutes ago. And then also in here, the original hook of this storm, this supercell down in here, east of Potto, south of Cameron, on the basically on the border with Oklahoma and Arkansas, generally coming towards Hartford and Huntington. So keeping an eye on kind of two areas of rotation there. This is all well south of Fort Smith right now. So Fort Smith, your tornadic threat is diminishing as well. And back up to our other storms. There's a couple other storms in northwest Arkansas, but they are non-severe right now. Maybe some brief gusty winds, some cloud to ground lightning, but these are in a less favorable environment too. It's like a couple storms have gone up into western Missouri as well. Those should also be in kind of a more rain-cooled environment, so less of a severe threat up there. That's even up towards Lebanon and El Dorado Springs. There's a little weak surface low that's up in here, basically up in the tri-state between Kansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. So even though it's not as conducive of an environment, that has a little extra lift with the weak surface low. So that's likely why there's a few more storms that have kind of gone up in those areas. Wow, look at the kind of the reverse shelf cloud. We're looking out underneath the shelf, kind of like a visor. We're looking out back to the east southeast where the light is. And it's still coming down south of Fort Smith. This is close to that area of interesting circulation, but by probably about 13 miles, and then about 17 to the other one. Even though it's not in our circulation areas, at least it's giving us an idea of what these storms are doing. And both of these areas of circulation look a little bit tighter than they did just another scan ago, especially the one here near Guilford. This one where the outflow boundary connects in is kind of a shear line, more of a surge of wind. There is a little bit of inflow wind in here, but it's a bit more of a shear line. This one near Gilmore is a little more interesting. You can see how the wind kind of wraps around an area, trying to tighten up. And that is right where that stinger has been somewhat present fairly consistently since it was back up here towards Shady Point. Yeah, so that one we have to watch. Drifting towards Hartford, Huntington on the Arkansas side of things. Oh, look at that camera cleared out super quick. Where is that? Yeah, at 540 right here. Wow, look at that. Just because they're not tornadic doesn't mean they're not impressive supercells. Some of these are. They're just non-tornadic supercells at the moment. Still watching some broad rotation in there near Cleveland and Lost Corner, Arkansas. Our other stronger cell is over Homewood, Tennessee. That one has lost the severe thunderstorm warning. And yeah, these are all basically non-tornadic cells. Just some larger hail in here near Lake Texoma along the Red River, Thackerville, Marietta, Kingston, Pottsboro, Denison, and Sherman. Keep an eye on there. Hopefully your car's in the garage. Same for this area here around Caddo, Durant, up towards Atoka. Maybe some brief heavy rain, some hail potentially in those. But yeah, these cells right here are still fairly interesting. Both of these areas are basically right where the outflow boundary interacts with the cell. So you can see the outflow boundary extending out to the east, and it kind of wraps in right here. And that's where there's a couple areas of little inflow that we've been watching for a while now, but they still haven't fully tightened up. Just on the last scan, they got, I think, a little bit tighter. Particularly this southern one is more interesting. Keep an eye on this at Huntington, Hartford, even towards Waldron and Boonville down here. This little corridor right in here could get a little interesting for a brief tornadic spin up. And the hail core has come up on this cell near Callington and Brent. That may work its way back into the Fort Smith metro here in the next little bit. Switch cameras. This is at basically the Arkansas state line here on I-40. So we'll keep an eye on that one. It's near the Van Buren area up here. We'll keep an eye on that as that storm is generally headed towards the I-40 corridor with some sizable half-dollar size hail. Both areas are kind of interesting there. These are bright greens and bright reds headed away from each other. That's actually divergence. So that's interesting there. That's basically down draft there as it's spreading out. So could get some severe winds out of that. And very quickly, let's check our snow camera. Start to lose the light there. That is in the mountain time zone though, but yeah, let's take a look here. I pulled the wrong camera. That's what we want to do. We want to do this one. Take a look at our snowy scene here. This is again at Dakota Hill, about 11,000 feet. So that is yeah, that is at about 11,000 feet. So potentially a few inches of snow there. It's hard to see the exact amount of snow that they got just because it's looking at more of a treetop view, but that area the winter weather advisory covers it goes for about 4 to 10 inches of snow in the highest elevations. We'll keep an eye on those snowy scenes too. Just mix those in every now and then. Continue to look back here at that. Okay, this is looking towards that darker area. That's the small but punchy cell with the potentially $half size hail over, over areas just west of Fort Smith. Back here toward, it doesn't look as punchy anymore, but Callington, south of Gans, that's looking towards that storm. Still a severe warning storm. And then newest severe warning, lime-sized hail, considerable threat. That's in the Lake Texoma cell. And that's moving north and east towards Kingston, Durant, Colbert, up towards Silo and Armstrong. You got maybe a couple minutes in Silo. It might be time to put the car in the carport. That's going to be some nasty hail. Also stay away from windows, skylights, and be in more of an interior section of your house with a lime-sized hail threat. That could do some damage to siding, to windows, and things like that. Still watching a couple areas of rotation with this cell near Gilmore. It's right on the state line with Arkansas. I'm approaching Hartford, Midland, Huntington. There's still also kind of a little area rotation, but it's more outflow driven near Huntington with that outflow boundary that kind of latched into this cell, or two cells now. They've kind of split a little bit. But yeah, that one cell near Greenwood and Huntington, still kind of interesting in there with the outflow boundary. And then the other cell shows a little bit more of a, it's had a little consistent rotation, I think, for a little while. But you can see the winds kind of arcing in there away from the radar and towards the radar. That's close to maybe a tornado warning, especially if it can increase the winds towards the radar. They're a little bit weak right now, but this seems like it's starting to localize a little bit in that area near Gilmore, so we'll keep an eye on that one. It's about to cross into areas around Hartford, West Hartford, in western Arkansas. Another little supercell right here. Not a lot of rotation in it right now, but keep an eye on that one. Havener, and then the upper Kiamichi River Wilderness area. They're going to continue the severe threat out through Magazine, Boonville, and Waldron. And yeah, this one's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they get a tornado warning, if it can maintain that rotation for a little bit longer. Still seeing some broad rotation in this cell, but it's more of a wind-driven threat right now. It's in a less favorable environment in the rain-cooled air. It's also pushed its own outflow boundary out. Still a nasty-looking storm, and look how dark it's gotten underneath that storm. That's at Atkins. Here's a better look at those storms that have that little circulation that we're looking at. This is at 71 and 540 there. That's looking a little more south towards the back end of those storms. Yeah, still an area of rotation in here near Huntington. It's kind of a broad area. And then the little tighter area near Oklahoma Peak, Sugarloaf Mountain, just to the east of Gilmore, and to the west of Hartford. This is the Arkansas Oklahoma state line right there. So it's about to cross from extreme eastern Oklahoma into Arkansas with that area of rotation right there. So we'll keep an eye on that one. As again, it moves towards Liberty, Hartford, Mansfield. And then, yeah, a couple of these other supercells down in here are a little bit more discreet. So keeping an eye on those as well. And they're in a little bit more favorable environment, at least that there's no outflow boundary out ahead of those. Just looking at that camera even more, just kind of seeing if I can see anything in there, but or in the backside, I'm just kind of looking at the environment. You can see how humid it is. There's some like rising scud, but it's not with a rotation area, but just definitely a warm and humid atmosphere. These storms have taken advantage of, at least for the wind threat. Just not seeing a lot in the for large hail or for tornadoes in this watch area. Yeah, we don't have a radar of it. It's in the Asian Pacific, but Typhoon Ragasa still has 130-mile-an-hour winds. It's a typhoon. Still 130-mile-an-hour winds within the inner eye wall. It is going to be a very close side swipe at the areas around Hong Kong. It looks like the eye and the eye wall are going to go south of Hong Kong, but still a dangerous storm as it comes into parts of China there. It's going to be a narrow miss for a direct hit for Hong Kong, but yeah, it's continuing a western or westward trajectory. And yeah, that would be equivalent to like a Category 3 hurricane. So, not a good situation there in kind of southeastern China. And as I think I mentioned earlier, the Hong Kong airport is closed right now. So. We're reposting some chasers are out with some pretty good structure shots of some of these storms this afternoon in Oklahoma, especially earlier. Trying to find any new kind of confirmed reports, but not seeing a lot at the moment. Interesting. Just double checking everything. But yeah, we haven't had any tornado warnings on our stream so far, so it's been good. Most of this has moved through some of the more populated areas, like the Northwest Arkansas metro, where the severe threat is really diminishing across the northern parts of Arkansas. And they have trimmed a little bit here. Looks like where the cold front is. They have trimmed the Tulsa metro off of the tornado watch. So that's good. I would assume here, this is basically the cold front. Once that gets through, they should trim some of these areas like Grove, Pryor Creek, down towards Muskogee, probably off of the watch area. And it looks like they've trimmed some of the northern parts of this watch. Harrison, Mountain Home, Salem, those areas. And wouldn't be surprised if pretty quickly they drop northwest Arkansas. They get a new warning for this lead cluster of cells past Jonesboro and Bay for a severe thunderstorm warning. Maybe some small hail, but it's mostly 60-mile-an-hour winds through Harrisburg, Marked Tree, Terrell, Lepanto, Truman Bay, areas they got hit hard in the spring with tornadoes. I recognize a lot of these names here. We saw a tornado cross the highway at Bay, and that ended up being the Lake City tornado. So, yeah, definitely go back and watch that video. But yeah, that tracked. We saw it basically form in the field south of the highway there, cross the interstate, and then it strengthened really rapidly just after that, crossing the highway near Bay, and then really rocketed up towards Lake City and Monette. And I don't know if it continued much further than that. Some of these storms may make it towards the Memphis metro in the next hour or so. Let me check the time. 35 miles an hour. Yeah, about like 70 to 75 minutes. They could be more into that, especially northern parts of the Memphis metro. And still watching this cell. This is still an interesting cell with a little rotation on kind of the northern end. It was more of a supercell earlier, but it's gusted out. You can see its outflow boundary. Right where that outflow boundary comes in, that's still a little area that we do need to watch for some rotation. Hasn't really tightened up that area, and it's still behind the larger outflow boundary, I think, from earlier. See that kind of across here? So that's limiting that cell. Otherwise, it would probably be in a bit more favorable of an environment. Otherwise, we've actually lost some of the severe warnings across the I-40 corridor. Atkins, Russellville, Clarksville, London, back towards Coal Hill. Still a nasty area. It's not a fun drive. Here's Atkins right here on the screen above. Yeah, it's definitely not a fun drive, but at least the severe weather has reduced a little bit along the I-40 corridor. Starting to push south of I-40. We're now south of Fort Smith. And we've lost some of that. Yeah, we've kind of, that area of circulation is still in here, but it's a lot weaker than it was. It's near West Hartford. It was a little stronger back up here towards Gilmore. Same with this area here near Mansfield and Liberty. It was a little stronger near Huntington. Those are good signs. Still watching a couple areas of circulation on those cells to the south, some supercells near Havener, and then near Winding Star Recreation Area. And then good news here, back for Fort Smith, the hailstorm, the hail threat has come down quite a bit on that cell near Muldrow. And that's looking towards those cells. Still some big hailstorms right along the Red River. Basically over Lake Texoma, Kingston, up towards Durant, and up towards Caddo, and now north of Antlers. Wouldn't be surprised if there's some hail in really any of those cores in the purple. This is now east of 35 for the most part. And then we also have storms that have gone up west of Dallas. None of those have been severe warned right now. A couple special weather statements out near Abilene and then up towards Jacksboro. Keep an eye on those. Maybe some isolated large hail. Particularly that storm near Jacksboro looks a little more interesting for large hail. And some of that may work its way into the Dallas Fort Worth metro further into the evening. But yeah, the severe threat a little more limited and isolated down into deeper parts of Texas. Turned on the mesoscale discussions. There's one for flooding, obviously highlighted in that green color, but there is one. It's hard to click on. There's so much stuff in here, but there is a mesoscale discussion, essentially in this gray color, basically right like that. And we can pull it a different way by just reading it manually. But essentially, wind and hail threat continued increase through the 7 to 8 o'clock hour, especially west central Arkansas, southeast Oklahoma. Tornado or two still appears possible, mainly near and east of that Fort Smith vicinity. So they're saying basically what we've been seeing. And yeah. Stalled outflow boundary. It's somewhat not stalled, but the larger outflow boundary is stalled, but there's still more localized outflow boundary from the storms earlier that's moving south. But that's helped limit our storms at the moment. And yeah, intensifying thunderstorm development ongoing along the trailing pre-cold front frontal storms down towards the McAllister and then down towards the Red River area near Sherman. So some aided inflow here as we get into the sunset hour. Could get briefly a little more tornadic here with that low-level jet kicked in. Although it does note the tornado potential becoming a bit more unclear, as some of the strongest low-level jets actually are going to be north into that cool boundary. Interesting notes. I think we highlighted that earlier. Basically, I think the tornado threat is kind of more limited to this area here in west central Arkansas. Potentially into southeast Oklahoma. Kind of like that. You're watching a couple of areas of rotation with some of these embedded supercells. They're kind of starting to cluster together a little bit. And that clustering is going to reduce their tornadic potential. Maybe a wind threat here on this cell starting to bow out here, coming through Clarksville, approaching Knoxville. It's through Paris and Blue Mountain, coming towards Havana, Danville, and then it's going to ride its way down I-40 towards London and Russellville. So keep an eye on that cell. Yeah, not a tornado threat really there, but that's going to be a more enhanced wind threat. Hey, Jay, how's it going tonight? Stay safe there in Puerto Rico, too. We're keeping a close eye on Puerto Rico. Check out our latest weather brief from this morning. We talked about the Invest. It's going to be basically headed across across the islands tonight, tomorrow, and yeah, a lot of rain. 5 to 34 inches. A couple feet of rain are possible in that high terrain. And I think that tropical wave is going to get through Puerto Rico without developing. But once it gets north and west of Puerto Rico, up towards the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, that's where I think it's going to have its better chance of development. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of rain. And then the other invest is potentially going to develop as well, but that one's going to go north of the islands. Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see if the models have kind of waved back and forth if those areas become hurricanes. Oh, they did up it. Just new breaking news. Now a 30-day or 30% 2-day chance, 70% in the so both of these now have high chances of development. That's going to be interesting. And it looks like our Gabrielle is down to a Category 3 storm. Let's check. There we go. Yeah, we're going to get a ton of rain the next day or two. Looks like maybe kind of right in there. It's still kind of a broad area of circulation. It's not really localized yet. And interestingly, they don't have a development risk over Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic. It's going to develop once it gets up in here. And then a lot of the models take it to the north. So it's very interesting. Could miss the US, but it could go a little more towards the north. It could go even a little more towards the northwest. So we're really got to watch this storm or this wave once it gets into here, like the Turks and Caicos, the southern Bahamas. And then also once it starts to really localize a low pressure, that's when models tend to kind of figure out which way it'll actually go. So anywhere along the east coast of the US needs to pay attention to this. Even up here in the mid-Atlantic, you guys need to pay attention to invest 94L. We'll certainly have updates here on WeatherCastUSA. So other than severe weather, anything that's threatening the US, we'll have updates for that. And then this one may go yeah, okay. They are going to, it's going to here. It's been more organized the last couple days. It's now given a 2-day development chance, high 2-day development chance, 70%, 90 in the 7 days. That's nearly a guarantee for the National Hurricane Center. Much more organized. It's a lot more localized. That one probably within the next 48 hours. The good news is the islands down here, this is going to pass north of the islands. Longer range, the models are a little more spread on this. Models that kind of weaken 93 or 94L, it's going to depend a lot on how these two storms kind of develop. But there's a potential here where this can go kind of either way too. And then if this develops, there's a potential it can go kind of either way as well. So we have essentially two systems to watch. They both could be tropical systems. This one's obviously going to, I think, develop first. If this develops, which is, I think, the bigger question mark, if that actually develops, it'll be interesting to see how these two systems interact. I'm not ready to put my bets on it yet. There's also, you can kind of see here spinning here, there's an upper level low in here. That's going to help some favorable shear. And yeah, we'll watch that upper level low too. Not for a tropical, but where it goes will help some of this environment. And yeah, the Azores and also the Iberian Peninsula have some issues. If you know anyone in Spain or Portugal, Spain or Portugal may be dealing with a tropical storm by the 28th. Gabrielle is still a nasty storm. Yeah, we'll be watching you, Jay. The next few days, it's going to be rough. Not much going on yet, just some trade wind showers and storms. But yeah, as that gets closer, you're going to get some pretty heavy rain the next few days. Did get a new warning here for that cluster storms. The one we've been kind of watching with a little area circulation now past Hartford. Still a little area there too, but that's kind of been affected by the larger complex of storms. And then still watching an area of circulation now showing up around Blue Mountain. Little interesting area. That may be a little bit out of that outflow boundary, so we'll keep an eye on that area. South of Paris, west of Danville. Otherwise, these storms are actually behaving themselves pretty good. Quarter-size hail and ping pong ball size hail near Vian here in eastern Oklahoma, south of Gore. Those continue to kind of drift towards the Fort Smith area. And that's a look actually above me at basically right here at Van Buren and Fort Smith. So the hail has come down on those cells a little bit. This cell has gone up a little more. Yeah, I would say that's probably accurate. Tomorrow morning, I'm surprised they don't have flood watches out yet across Puerto Rico. But yeah, you're going to get some pretty heavy rain there in Puerto Rico the next couple days. So definitely stay safe there, Jay. Even without tropical storm or hurricane, that kind of rainfall, potentially feet of rainfall, could do some serious flooding. Yeah, little area rotation now showing up a little stronger there near Blue Mountain, Quarry Hill, over towards Waveland, Snake Knob, Walnut Grove. Keep an eye on that area right there. This storm has really lost its area of rotation coming towards Greenbrier, north of Conway. Mostly a wind threat right now. And then back here towards Truman, Marked Tree, wind threat there. You can see the gusty winds surging out of those storms. That's going to approach the I-55 corridor near Terrell and Wilson. Wow, pretty dark under that storm. That's at Terrell, looking west-northwest towards those storms. You can see the lightning on the horizon there. We'll keep an eye on that. This is a southbound look, so it's getting darker there. This is at 71 in Y City, out ahead of that area of right here at the end of the warning polygon, out ahead of this area of severe weather here, coming towards this area around Waldron, Y City, and some of the smaller communities up here in the Ouachitas. But this area is more interesting here the last couple minutes. Area of rotation picking up near Blue Mountain. Yeah, that's been a little bit of an increase. We'll keep an eye on that one. That's basically riding along Highway 10. This is State Highway 10 here in Arkansas between Magazine and Blue Mountain, down towards Havana, Belleville, Corinth, and Danville. Also the Dry Creek Wilderness area and Blue Mountain Lake. A little area of spin kind of on the leading edge of that. It's an interesting feature. It's a little bit right along and maybe behind the outflow boundary. So that may be preventing that one from getting a little more organized too. This is a big mess down here. 1-inch hail in Durant just about 8 minutes ago. And then still potential here for golf ball size hail. Caddo, Durant, Bennington here in southern Oklahoma. That storm that I also said was interesting earlier near Jacksboro, that's gone severe warned east to Jacksboro, approaching Bridgeport and Decatur with quarter-size hail. Could get some hailstorms isolated out towards Abilene. Most of this right now is at least away from the Dallas-Fort Worth metro. And then haven't talked about Missouri much. Flash flood warning ongoing here in Branson for, I think it was 3 to 5 inches of rain in Taney County. Those storms have moved off to the north. They're up here towards St. Robert, up towards Bolivar. Interesting little cell there. And then, yeah, we'll see if some of this gets into the Little Rock area. The good news is here's that outflow boundary. And then actually some of that outflow boundary reaches all along that I-40 corridor. So some of that might limit the severe weather potential, at least for the Little Rock metro. But yeah, a couple areas of rotation in here that are interesting. This one near Blue Mountain is our newest kind of most interesting area of rotation. Still a little bit broad near Quarry Heights and Waveland. We'll keep an eye on that one. And then this cell, as it sinks through Hartford and Huntington, has had rotation at times. It's pretty broad right now. It's outflow driven at the moment. There still is a little area south of Hartford that we have to watch. Our camera above there is at Y City along 71, so that's generally headed towards that area. And then haven't talked about it that much because it's mostly essentially stratiform rain, but a lot of heavy rain back up here in the Ozarks, Mountain Home, Salem, Cherokee Village, Batesville, Mountain View. All those areas have heavy rain right now. And I've said it a few times on the stream, would not be surprised if some of the flood watches and warnings, or the warnings that are out here in western Arkansas, get extended through the evening. Please turn around, don't drown across the northern parts of Arkansas, the Ozarks, especially once it gets dark. It's going to be pretty rough travel even after the storms move through, with areas that have generally gotten 2 to 5 inches of rain in kind of a general area, with more rain ongoing. And you can see some of this is back building a little bit, non-severe, but there's still storms around Harrison approaching Mountain Home. So continue to turn around, don't drown, and don't drive through flooded roadways. And if you have to, seek higher ground now before it really gets dark. But yeah, we're concentrating now. The severe threat is quickly shifting south of the 40-40 corridor. basically along and south of 40. With this area getting a lot more interesting now. There's actually a notch feature that's showing up even on the reflectivity, a little embedded supercell here. See, it's trying to clear this inflow notch. There's some rain-cooled outflow on a rear flank, trying to wrap around a little stronger. And yeah, where I drew it is exactly where I drew it from the reflect. That's bad when I can pretty much draw it from the reflectivity, and it's basically spot on the velocity scan. That's how you know it's a pretty organized storm. It's not just it doesn't just have that look. It's actually doing what we're diagramming here. So this is an intensifying area of circulation near Blue Mountain, Highway 10, essentially working south and east. Start to think of tornado safety precautions here: Havana, Belleville, Corinth, Danville. We'll have to see if this circulation can hold. We've had problems today kind of sustaining tight circulation. This one isn't particularly tight yet, but it's definitely come up in the last couple scans. And then I'm still watching particularly this area here that's come through the Hartford area. This was a tighter circulation up towards Shady Point in Oklahoma, and then Gilmore and kind of Hartford. It's kind of going like that. That's still in here, but it's more of a shear line at the moment, but we're keeping an eye on that one. And this camera up here is generally on the path of that area of circulation. But yeah, let's back this up and it's kind of maintaining. It hasn't really tightened in the last couple scans, but it's there. Some good news here for that one storm. They're going to basically replace the severe warning here for Waldron and areas here like Dry Creek Wilderness with a special weather statement for 50-mile-an-hour winds. Yeah, the winds do seem to have backed off in that cell. We're still decently close to the Fort Smith radar, so we get a decent wind profile to confirm some of those winds. We have not seen, I don't think, at least reported, we haven't seen any of those 75-mile-an-hour potential wind gusts, at least in the storms across Arkansas. This is still an interesting cluster of storms, non-tornadic, but various clusters of hail cores in here, golf ball size hail, potentially, especially north of Durant, up towards Caddo, Caney, and Atoka. Looks like we've seen some train spotter reports of 1.25 inch hail, 1 inch hail relayed to emergency management. So certainly this area around Lake Texoma up towards Durant and then up the US 69 corridor could have some decent hail corridor there. And then also watching $half size hail near Chico, Bridgeport, Decatur. We'll see if that skirts the Denton area later. And then storms off to the west of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro. I haven't seen any severe warnings out of these cells out towards Abilene yet. We're losing quite a bit of the severe warnings, so that's a good sign. We're getting towards dark here now that we're past the fall equinox. And yeah, starting to get dark here along the I-55 corridor. That storm is no longer severe. A lot of lightning in it, though, as it works its way towards the I-55 corridor around Marktree, Lepanto, and Truman. Still a big mess around the Fort Smith area. There's non-severe storms over Fort Smith. There's some severe storms to the west of Fort Smith with some hail, $half size maybe. That's come down a little bit. And then there's severe storms to the south of Fort Smith that already worked through. So not a great travel day in Fort Smith, at least right now. And still watching this. It's kind of maintained, kind of tightened. It's an interesting little area. also starting to get interaction from a little cell that's out in front. Look at that, just pop up right there near Havana. I wouldn't be surprised if this area gets at least a severe warning. And they are going to extend that golf ball size hail threat up through Atoka, Stringtown, Caney, north of Caddo in Oklahoma. Again, that's just a big mess right now. Potentially some larger hail here over the Choctaw Nation. With some of those cells, we're a little bit away from the radar site. There's those that southeastern Oklahoma is one of the more frustrating radar holes. Yeah, maybe not as much hail right in there. But back here towards Stringtown and Atoka, that's where you have a little more concentrated hail threat. Storms have come down now that we are headed towards sunset across the northern part of this. So the northwest Arkansas and then also northeast Oklahoma. I think your severe threat is really winding down. I wouldn't be surprised if they trim most of this off of the tornado watch. Regardless of severe weather, this lead cluster and then kind of a new cluster of storms developing back here towards Fort Smith, this is going to continue the flood threat to the south and east. So especially that I-40 corridor, I think we're going to see more flash flood warnings probably pop up along that as more heavy rain is falling across the Fort Smith metro. 1.5 to 3 inches of rain. And yeah, there's some areas in here. Southern Missouri down towards Cassville, Carthage, Branson, and then in here towards Eureka Springs, Green Forest, and Harrison, and then also north of I-40 here across the Boston Mountains that have seen a pretty good, at least according to the radar, what the watch and warnings were calling for, about 4 inches, kind of broadly 3 to 4 inches, with some higher elements closer to maybe 6. I think that's maybe overestimating a few of those points. But yeah, across southern Missouri, good 2.5 inches in a lot of this, with some pockets of 3. And yeah, 1.5 is, I think, the largest hail we've seen, at least on the reports right now. A couple storms have had lime-size hail warnings, but I don't know if those have verified. Golf ball size hail is the largest hail right now being warned in this cluster from Atoka, Caney, and Caddo, now north of Durant in southern Oklahoma. Let's go back to that little area of interest that, yeah, that's broadened out. It's gotten kind of wrapped in that rain. The cell that popped up out ahead of it has really kind of diminished that area of circulation that we had briefly. It's looking more impressive just a couple minutes ago. If I back it up, it was starting to get that look there where we had that kind of an embedded supercell wrapping around. But then this new area of rain and precip, it's pushed into there and really cut off that circulation from the warm, moist inflow. Still is kind of a broader area of circulation in there, but see back here, we're starting to actually get pretty tight at one point. And that has completely kind of washed out. Before we lose the light, let's get one last look at our snow scene out of Dakota Hill in Colorado. This was at 11,000 feet. It's going to probably stop reporting because I think these cameras shut off after dark, but at least the visual part. But through the day, or at least the afternoon, this is the scene. Every 10 minutes, this photo. So just a very pleasant scene. The snow at least has been in the higher elevations in a fairly less populated area too. So travel isn't a huge issue. But yeah, just some good early season snowfall for this area, especially for the ski country. The the ski resorts up there are going to love that kind of stuff. But potentially over a foot of snow over about 13,000 feet. So some definitely beneficial accumulating snowfall. Still some circulation in here. It might be trying to localize again on the southern flank of that storm, but it's just running into too much clutter at the moment. And meanwhile, this area is broadened out as well, so that's a good sign. Also weakened. We've seen, I think, a general weakening, which is a great sign. So I think we're going to wrap it up here since it's going to be, I think, a busy weather week. Let's just quickly go through. These storms are pushing through basically the enhanced risk already. They're at basically at the base of the enhanced risk. So this didn't end up likely verifying this enhanced risk just with the we said very early on the stream all the ingredients had to come together. It was a conditional enhanced risk. If the ingredients came together in the right way, there's a potential for 2 to 3 maybe supercells that the models had kind of honed in on riding along an outflow boundary, and with the potential for some significant tornadoes. I also haven't seen really any severe weather in the other marginal risk, but yeah, beyond today, and you can check out our weather briefs in the morning, usually posted mid-morning. We'll detail all the severe weather chances as well as any flood threats and a tropical update every morning. So definitely give that a good read. But let's take a look here. Tomorrow, I believe we have another day of severe risk, but it kind of broadens out. Large marginal risk covering the Ohio Valley, the mid-Mississippi Valley, and Tennessee valleys, all the way down to the Gulf Coast potentially. I don't believe there's many localized areas though. No tornado risk listed yet. A very large area basically under that marginal risk for wind, and really no hail. So it's mostly a wind-driven marginal tomorrow. And then from there, pushes to the East Coast on Thursday. Potentially a little bit more of an enhanced area, potentially here on the day 3 for essentially the mid-Atlantic, New York, Philly, Baltimore, down to Charlotte and Washington, D.C. So we'll see about that. But yeah, anyway, but the larger risk stretches all the way here from New England all the way down to New Orleans. So we'll keep an eye on the day 3, the day 2, and then anything that goes crazy over the last couple hours of day 1. And then we do have to pay attention to the tropics. Again, anyone that has any interest in Europe, the Iberian Peninsula, parts of Spain and Portugal under the threat of a tropical storm by the 28th. Yeah, the 28th. In the latest National Hurricane Center forecast cone, Here's a look at hurricane, Category 3 hurricane now. Still has an eye. Still very well structured. Category 3 Gabrielle, down to 125-mile-an-hour winds. It's pushing very fast away from Bermuda, but it's going to cover the Atlantic pretty quickly as it gets east here. And yeah, could have some tropical storm force winds affecting Portugal. Definitely some heavy rain. And then also some swells, some heavy swells still affecting areas from the Carolinas up through parts of Atlantic Canada. And then, yeah, this is almost a guarantee now by the National Hurricane Center. Invest 93L, looking very well organized. We can see blow up fairly close to the center, so it's trying to localize the center on the low levels. Within the next 24, 48 hours, that should be at least a tropical depression, if not even a tropical storm. And it's going to continue moving basically northwest for the least the next 5 days or so before things get a little more interesting with that. It has a couple different paths. It could start to pull towards the north. Could go east of Bermuda, could go over Bermuda, could go west of Bermuda. It could also continue on a more westerly, northwesterly track. So a lot of model divergence, what it does later in its track, which is why it's one to watch. It's maybe slightly less one to watch at the moment. The other one to watch is less organized right now, but this is 94L. Invest 94L. It's more of an elongated low pressure. It's going to be fighting a little bit here, the islands and the higher terrain of Puerto Rico, of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and even eastern Cuba has higher terrain. This is going to kind of track basically northwest across some of those larger islands. Gusty winds, very heavy rain, some rougher surf. It's not going to be a fun day across the islands, but likely not tropical storm or hurricane, at least the next couple days. After it gets through the islands, once it gets to the Turks and Caicos and the southern Bahamas, is where the National Hurricane Center now has a high interest in the 7-day. It's going to be more in that 5-day kind of time frame, I think, after it gets into this area. But yeah, that's where it has a lot more favorable chance. And then models take it kind of a couple different ways. To the north, may peel it out to the northeast, more towards the north, more towards the northwest. So there's a lot of model divergence with that system too. Models tend to have a better handle once things kind of localize, which is maybe why they have a little better handle on 93L, because it is a little bit more of a condensed system, and it has been for the last 24 hours. It's been pretty organized for a tropical wave, actually even more than that, for about 48 hours. You can see the difference in them. Just much more of a structured ball versus this kind of being a little broad, kind of ovally shape. There's not quite as much structure on it, but yeah, models tend to have a little less, just a little less grasp of things when they're more of this elongated kind of low pressure system. So yeah, things are going to be interesting in the tropics, at least here into late parts of September. So we'll have you covered on WeatherCast USA, severe weather, tropical hazards, and all of that. If things go real crazy tonight, we'll pop back on. It doesn't look like it is. And let me just give this one more look once over here. I'm sure as soon as we log off, I'm sure we'll get a tornado warning. But they did reissue the severe thunderstorm warning near Lepanto and Bassett for the winds coming towards the Mississippi River. Some of that may skirt the northern parts of the Memphis metro, but not really a tornado threat there. And then it's outflow driven. We have outflow dominant storms coming into the northern parts of Little Rock, heavy rain, gusty winds, potential for flash flooding, but those are outflow dominant storms at the moment. Still kind of the same outflow dominant storms back here towards Russellville, Danville, Dardanelle. And then south of Fort Smith is where we have the more interesting weather. We've had a couple areas of rotation with these cells, but they appear to be more outflow driven at the moment now too. Yeah, still some in here near Waldron, but those are more outflow dominant and weakening on a downtrend, which is good. There's some larger hail potentially still in southern Oklahoma across the Red River Valley. Golf ball size hail near Atoka, back towards Caddo and Caney. Oh, there's our largest hail of the day. Tennis ball size hail, 2.5-inch report there. Just 3 miles northwest of Armstrong, about 30 minutes ago. And yeah, that can happen in some of these larger hail storms. The general large hail might be in here, but then there's one tennis ball or something like that. So there's a potential for a few larger hail storms or stones. This cell seems to be diminishing near Alford and Decatur. Quarter size hail was a $half size hail warning earlier, and still may get a warning or two out of these storms west of DFW towards Abilene for some isolated large hail. But yeah, I think other than flash flooding and other than some isolated damaging winds, I think the tornado threat seems to be minimal, at least right now. May get a quick spin up along this leading edge here, but those should continue to diminish as it gets dark across the central time zone. So thanks for joining us. If you're new here, like and subscribe. Click the bell icon, get notifications when we go live. And yeah, those help. Clicking the bell icon, clicking the like button, those help the YouTube algorithm get the important weather information out to more people. And we try to have fun too. The chat was a little quiet today, but we have a great weather community, real interested in learning. So I appreciate questions in the chat, and always have some good weather discussions in the chat. So yeah, thanks to all our participants today too. Have a good one. Stay safe. Have multiple ways to get warnings across the watch areas. And also turn around, don't drown. Watch for flooded roadways across the higher terrain of the Boston Mountains, the I-40 corridor, and the Ozarks. Thanks.